back into our budget work session on talking about board amendments. So we're a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to try to keep us moving this afternoon. We are going to move into the homeless services amendments outside of employment services, which we've already covered. So we have a grouping that board staff put together that includes Amendment 10, Amendment 12B, Amendment 15, 19, 20, 22, 28, 34. So we actually have, so I'm going to help, do we have momentum to combine the LGBTQI2S+ into one amendment? Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to.
Is that you mean just, yeah.
Yes.
You mean just for this, right now?
Well, no, I meant forever. Like, can we just, can we?
So I think we should wait to do it till we get to the,
Yes, I'm putting it out there that, yes, for today, we should only talk about it. I think mine's the only one that might have a pay for, maybe not, but yes, I mean, when it comes to actually voting, it would be great to be at a place where we have one amendment instead of three. Okay. Great. All right. So we are going to, let's kick it off with amendment number 10. Which is person-level shelter transition plan. Commissioner Brim Edwards has that one. So that's amendment number 10. All right. And we're going to, this amendment moves $1 million from housing placement and retention, additional placement out of shelter, the one time only $10 million, to safety off the streets, shelter ramp down. And hi, Anna. Would you talk a little bit about the some of the impacts for that one?
Sure. Good afternoon. Once again, for the record, Anna Plum, she, her pronouns, Deputy Director for Multnomah County Homeless Services Department. We're on page 26 of our packets for
Thank you.
those of you who need a page number. So yeah, this, it's not a reduction. It's really more setting aside funding of that 10 million, is my understanding, to make sure that it is directed at those programs that are closing. So we said there was not actually a fiscal impact because we would be using that money for that purpose. So this just really designates that at least $1 million of it would go to the shelters that have folks closing in between July 1st and August 30th to support client level transition planning, et cetera.
Okay.
We would be using the funds for that purpose anyway, so it's just really formalizing that $1 million of the 10 would be set aside. I will say, if we have further reductions of the overall pot, having 1 million designated for a specific reason will just sort of restrict how we allocate it across the others, but we would definitely be focusing funding to support those folks in shelters that are closing at the outset of the fiscal year. That's a part of our plan.
Can I ask, there's been conversation about the 10 million going through an allocation process. I don't know if that means a particular NOFA or how you're planning to do it. I think, and I'm not going to speak for Commissioner Brim Edwards, but where I've been trying to figure out is, are we going to allocate them some money so they can start using it July 1, as opposed to them having to go through some kind of process?
So we are working to have funding available by July 1st. We do need to land on the amounts and sort of what that looks like. We are working as quickly as possible with the intention that things would be available really quickly. Yeah, we have already done the allocation process for the InReach programs that will be using this funding. So we're in that evaluation process right now. We do need to land on the final amounts and then what that goes across. Yeah.
So, and I don't mean to say I'm not worried about the other providers, but in particular, the ones who have to close by August, having the dollars right away will be really important.
So I think one thing I want to, how do I say this? The funding will be going through an InReach program, so it would be allocated to a shelter that is closing. If that shelter provider is not an InReach provider, that shelter may not have those funds. It would be an InReach provider who's doing that closure support in partnership with the provider.
Okay, and this is regardless of if they already currently have staff who do that work?
So we have gone through a reallocation process for all of our InReach programs, and we are reallocating, and people were eligible to apply to say, yes, I would like to continue to do outreach, InReach, or no, I do not. So we are working through that process right now.
Okay. I've heard from, I think maybe all of us have heard from some of those providers that they've been asking for $2 million to be allocated right away for the shelters that are closing.
I saw that letter, yes.
Is this a conversation that you all have had? Do we understand what the need actually is?
I will say our conversations have been somewhat different with the providers. We understand there is a need to have funding right away for folks in the shelters that are closing. We intend to make that happen. What that looks like and how that works with the InReach allocation is something we're still working through. They have identified to us that it is somewhat shelter guest support and somewhat thinking about how they support staff at programs that are closing.
So there's already 1.8 million, which is for operations, including
Correct.
staff,
Yes.
correct?
Yep, and
then
that
this is
we,
the
so
rent
that's what we have
assistance.
communicated is that they should be using their operations funding for that staff support. That's what we've communicated. Yep.
Okay. I will say, I appreciate your answers. I understand what you all are trying to do, but it feels like it's making it complicated for shelters that are closing to have to be a part of some other allocation InReach process, even though I have been the person championing an InReach process for housing placement. So I don't know where this question goes, but I'm unclear on, is it a budget amendment? Is it a budget note? How do we get to the crux of, we need these providers to have money day one, understanding that, you know, from my perspective, it would be come September 30, once everything's closed out. If they have not spent that money, then it goes back in to then be reallocated appropriately.
Why don't we start with me following up with more detail on what we're envisioning, and then we can see from there. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
And a question that I have then is, you know, based on how we're envisioning the InReach housing placement work to do, is there going to be a focus, first on the shelters that are closing in order to transition those folks first? Because that is where the need is going to be.
We will, yes. Yeah, we need to make sure that those programs have funding as quickly as possible, right, to get people moved through. So yes, yes.
Okay, so there will be a priority given to those shelters as this work is ramping up. Okay.
Correct.
Should be noted, it says it's a minimum of 1 million.
Okay, got it.
If you can do it for less, great. It could be amended, but just to know there's a flexibility that it was not
Got it.
a specific number.
Okay, I think that's everything on that one. Okay, so moving on to the next amendment, which is 12B. So we have,
So this is, Amendment 12B is from Commissioner Jones-Dixon. It regards restoring City of Gresham to the funding level they had this fiscal year. I want to start by being really clear, Gresham is a valued partner. We appreciate working with Gresham. They do a really great job. And we completely understand where this is coming from. So I'm going to speak to sort of the impact and perspective, but that does not negate the fact that we really value Gresham as a partner. So in this fiscal year, the City of Gresham received $1.2 million from HSD. Some of that was funding that was added back in the last budget process as one-time only funding to get them back up to a current service level. The City of Gresham is their ongoing funding in County General Fund last year was $328,720, so it was a lower amount. The City of Gresham operates as one of several outreach zones in Multnomah County and performs outreach and other homeless services in that zone. We have gone through the process to design our zones and allocate across the zones what we think would go to each zone. And for Gresham, what we would have given to Gresham for outreach this fiscal year, based upon their proportion of the zones, is $494,000. I do want to note that the city of Gresham was about 2% of the point-in-time count data, and it's also about 12% of our most recent outreach data. So that $494,000, that represents 12% of the outreach zones, to be in proportion, the higher proportion that we have of data we have of what the need is in Gresham. Across all outreach programs, our outreach bucket took a 30% reduction last fiscal year. If we were to keep Gresham without any reduction but reduce all the other zones, that would have a disproportionate impact. And I want to walk through how we would do that using the program offers that were outlined in the amendment. So you'll see a chart here in your document. The first line is taking from the current outreach amendment. This isn't actually a reduction. That $494,000, that is what we would be allocating to Gresham from that program offer based upon our analysis of need across the zones and what would be appropriate for the city of Gresham. So that's not actually a reduction. Once we take that 494 off the top, we would be allocating the remaining reduction sort of proportionally across the other program offers that were identified. Adult and women households, and that would be taking, that what was remaining in that program offer right now is primarily culturally specific adult housing placements. So there'd be 19 fewer culturally specific adult housing placements. 19 fewer placements from the placement out of shelter program offer, that's from the base offer. And then 12 fewer placements from youth rapid rehousing, for a total of 49 fewer placements across those other program offers.
Thank you. And you said the 30% reduction, was that last year what folks took?
Between this year and last fiscal year, the outreach program offer took a 30% reduction.
Between the 2 years, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any questions about this one or the offsets? Okay, thank you. We will move on to the next amendment, which is, this is where I think we can talk about all of them at the same time. So we have 15, 19, and 34.
Do you want me to walk through the three of them really quickly?
Yes.
And the different offsets?
Yeah.
Okay, so 15 is the first to restore LGBTQIA2S+ day services. The 15 identifies $221,000 from the additional placement out of shelter program offer, which is the $10 million one-time only. That would result in 17 fewer individuals not receiving placement out of shelter into housing. Again, as I mentioned earlier, every $13,000 we remove from that program offer is one less exit from shelter into housing. The second, if you go to page 44, is 19. This is the same offset, so that identifies the same offset. So those two have the same impact and they use the same source. That is, sorry, page 44. Okay. Amendment 19. Okay. And then the very last page in your packet is the last one, page 72, is the third amendment for this offset. This one actually pulls funding from the same program offer to close that $221,000 gap. This was proposed by Chair Bigot-Peterson. So this would come from the existing program offer by reducing the cost for service for another shelter program. We have 2 shelter programs, as you know, that are transitioning providers right now due to one provider no longer remaining in the shelter services business. We have looked at that budget and we believe we can take the $221,000 from one of those programs without impacting service impact of that shelter. So we would be moving that over to keep the day center open.
Okay, and I do want to note, the other 2 amendments were submitted first, and I had said at that time, I will find some way to pay for that. That doesn't cost additional program offsets from other programs, so.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the work of the Homeless Services Department to help find that. Okay, any questions about this? Okay. So my suggestion, and we can talk about this, is just when we align under one, just to use the dollars within the same program offer so we don't have to negatively impact other programs. Okay, great. Moving on. So we have 20, Amendment 20, which is around hygiene and preventative health services. And this is the one that we discussed earlier this morning in terms of It was similar to or connected to the employment services work. This amendment just separated out this portion of the work, where in other amendments, it was included in there.
Correct.
Okay.
So to give you what would be added back, this would support 6 weekly shower and hygiene sites, resulting in 1,500 people accessing shower and hygiene sites across the county. And it would support 4 employment placements through the program. The offset identified here is similar to one from a previous amendment. It's pulling $804,000 from Safety on the Streets, which is our primary outreach offer. As I noted earlier, that is a 22% reduction of that offer. And that, again, that is the outreach programs I just mentioned that provide outreach across the county, across a series of zones. This would result in 234 fewer people being served with outreach, 147 fewer people being connected to services, 92 fewer shelter exits, and 39 fewer people exiting that outreach program to a housing placement. As noted earlier, our outreach zones are geographic, and we also overlay that with population-specific outreach, culturally specific and behavioral health. Because we need to ensure geographic coverage, one of the potential impacts would be removing one of those culturally specific providers or the behavioral health specific outreach team to meet the reduction.
Okay. Questions on this one? All right. Continuing on. Thank you. Recovering Housing Rental Voucher Amendment number 22.
Page 50.
Page 50, thank you. Okay, so this has pay-fors from both the Homeless Services Department and the Health Department. So Health Department, I'll ask you to come up after Homeless Services talks about this. So okay.
Okay, so I will speak to the HSD portion first, and then I'll let my colleague Anthony speak. So this originally identified a funding source within HSD that is actually state-level funding that has specific eligibility. So we took the liberty of saying we would take it from additional placement out of shelter. Thank you, Commissioner Moyer. We talked about that. So what this would do is this would remove the funding, $2.1 million at the suggested number of placements and the cost that projected. It would be $2.1 million that would be removed from the additional placement out of shelter program offer, which again is that $10 million one-time only offer. For our program, that results in 162 fewer people exiting from shelter into housing, which would reduce the placement out of shelter exit rate for that program from 30% to 28%. I do want to acknowledge that it is funding housing placements elsewhere, but we're speaking to the impacts of the program offer that we are reacting to in terms of how it would impact our budget and our program offer.
For the record, my name is Anthony Jordan, the Interim Behavioral Health Director. And this amendment reallocates PATH role from doing what they originally do to doing housing navigation. One of the impacts, it does somewhat take away what the PATH currently do. We provide clinical services while we do the navigation. Not saying that it can't be workable, but that is something that they will do, and we got to talk to HR about what that impact may look like. We don't know if we're going to actually serve 150, be able to serve 150 individuals. That would be our goal, based upon the nature of where those referrals would be coming from, knowing that some of those individuals may not necessarily want to go into recovery housing. So we'll be looking at the number, but the goals we will be trying to reach is 150. And that's the impact from behavioral health.
I'm likely to, I don't know if I'll put it in the amendment description or a budget note, but I think after some conversation, I want to explore, and I don't know if we can quite nail down the details before we adopt the budget, but I want to explore the idea of providing 3 months from this funding stream and then enrolling people through the 1115 health-related social need it's not a voucher, well, it is a voucher, but that is in partnership with our Department of County Human Services. So I don't want to write that in the amendment as what we are going to do, because we are still having that conversation, but it may be a very real possibility, and then the intention would be to shrink the amount taken from that pot, if that's a possible way of getting us funding. Since this leaving intensive treatment is a qualifying event.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And there's some conversation that we have not yet had time to have where it is likely partnership with the team that is in my eviction prevention amendment, because that includes some of the intake specialists to do all of the way too much paperwork to access the Medicaid waiver rental assistance benefits. So a little bit more work to do, I think, on both, but I think there's a there.
Okay, great. So I love to hear all of this, and it'd be great to be able to use the Medicaid dollars for this, if we're able to, for this type of housing. Do you expect there to be updates then to this amendment?
Yeah, I don't want to change the dollars because
We don't know yet.
well, it will need a little bit. Even if this all works, we have to have the placement in place before we can process somebody, because they need to have that. They have to be in the housing. It's a bizarre requirement, but it is one. But I don't want to put a dollar figure because we don't know how this is going to totally pan out. I don't want to overpromise that, oh, now actually it's only 400,000. I'm making that up. I don't know what it would be. What I would add is we're going to explore this alternative funding, and if that works, that's the model we will implement. But if it doesn't, we will stick with the original plan. Does that make sense?
It does. I think, so I see on the amendment page, I see basically designating the 2.0 FTE for the PATH team to doing this work. I don't see where we're designating the 2.1 million that's talked about here.
That's the
It just
cost.
basically, yeah, it's earmarking it within the same program offer. Is that what you're looking to do? Like,
Okay.
within the,
Yeah, well, yes, because it is housing. So it's this, yeah, it's just how, it is a housing placement. And so what we're doing is, the money is still housing placement. It's just being identified for this specific type of housing. So we're not really moving the money, we're designating. And then the 2 FTE is coming from the existing PATH budget. And, we've had a couple of conversations about how we can reach that. I also have questions about, like, how does this fit with what we are moving toward in deflection? Because the vision, which I like to believe we're headed toward, is that we are having a deeper level of engagement with individuals through deflection, which includes multiple contacts and service navigation, but that other members of the community, now, again, 92% of people through the deflection program are experiencing homelessness. That would not preclude somebody in the community or a provider from reaching out to the PATH Center and saying, I'm working with this person, they meet the requirements for this SHS service, they want to go XYZ, can you help? Are there slots available? So it's not directly deflection, but it certainly could be somebody who has gone through deflection and made it all the way through intensive treatment, or it could community members, partners, or individuals seeking help navigating through their recovery is the hope.
Okay. So I have a couple questions. So I think one of my questions is how, maybe it's a Christian question, like, because right now it's designating from 3002A and 3002B, and those are two different program offers, so like how much from each one? And then, and maybe this is a question for you, Anthony. So my other question is, is it a workable thing to, instead of having two PATH folks dedicated to this, to add this type of work to all of the PATH folks, like, work that they would do as they're engaging with people?
That is my preference, but it would add to workload.
Okay.
So then I think you might have to spread it out and add.
Again, Anthony Jordan, Interim Behavioral Director. The reason why we probably couldn't do that, because some of those other paths are that funding is very specific to grants and other funding. They're under different funding streams, and I think these two particular ones is on the county general fund. And then the other piece, I forgot to bring up, we're going to have to probably work through sort of the procurement process to fund some of the housing. I think we're working on some of those plans in the back to work through some of those other processes, but it would be difficult to do the other ones, to make it all encompassing. I do like the idea about the deflection, because we invest a lot of dollars that we can move some of those, because there are PATH care coordinators at the center, and if they go through that services, they have a flow through. So that's a great idea. So.
I do want to clarify, because I think it can be very confusing. Different service sectors use the same language to mean different things. So recovery housing in this context is not intensive treatment. Now, a NAR certified 4 is intensive treatment. That is not covered. It is a NAR 3 and 2 certified, which is post-intensive treatment into a supported housing environment that has some level of ongoing programming, but it is not the intensive daily of either intensive outpatient or residential. So I wanted to make that clear, and we currently financially support lots of intensive outpatient and residential. We do not currently, through behavioral health, although we have paid to help create some of these recovery housing, to my understanding of the documents, we don't pay for beds for NAR 2 and 3. Is that correct?
They're not necessarily NAR as far as a certification, but we do pay for 2 and 3, but we don't have dedicated beds as what you're proposing here. We don't have, like with some of our providers, it's not a dedicated resource for us to carry.
Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah, that's.
Sorry, that piece made it a little bit more confusing. So is it then the intent that the dollars are attached to the bed, so we're essentially subsidizing that program as opposed to rapid rehousing attached to the person?
No, they're attached to the person.
Okay, thank you. Okay, buying a bed, I'm like, oh no, wait a minute, what happened? And I think we just haven't had a chance to connect about the connection or potential connection between the two amendments. So I think by our next public session, we'll be able to provide updates. I keep looking at you because I know both of our calendars don't really say that that's true, but we'll make it happen.
If I could offer, Kristen Elkin, County Budget Director, I use she, her pronouns. Commissioner, if I could work with your team just to detail out the 1.2 million down below, just to say, even if it's going from this more general pot in a program offer to a more refined service within the same program offer, just so I think it shows up here and it will just help people track it a little bit easier. Thank you.
And then maybe just one other piece to discuss at some point is there a point in time where we do relook at this and have the opportunity to reallocate dollars should the plan be successful, so that the dollars that aren't maybe needed can then go back into more generalized housing placement.
Yeah, I think it would be my preference that it rolls back, it's not back, it's still there, but it goes, we don't need it for this purpose as much, and so it would just go to other individuals.
I think we probably have to put a timeline on it to give them the ability to do that.
Would need to have the permission to start spending it elsewhere if there's some sort of formal mechanism, but yeah, we can figure that out.
So maybe we have like a budget note or something to asking folks to come back by the end of the calendar year. I don't know how much time you need to figure out if if that spending plan will work or not.
Probably January would be a great time because it's going to take a ramp up because it's a new process, doing all the contract. So maybe January, we'll look at we'll have a projection probably by then.
Okay, well, y'all have fun with that. Okay, great. I think thank you very much. Okay, so we're moving on to Commissioner Jones-Dixon's East County Outreach. And Commissioner, I think you also wanted to speak on the Amendment 12B as well, so feel free to just talk about whichever ones you want to. Okay.
But we can move on. That's,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Go.
Am I going or you?
Okay. Oh, well, so I'm sorry, I usually will introduce them unless we want to. Anna, you're doing so much work, you're giving us page numbers, you're being so helpful. Yeah, so this is Amendment 28 on page 62, which expands frontline homeless outreach and human services in District 4. So, okay, now I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so East County, outside of the city of Gresham, is also an outreach zone that we serve via providers doing outreach, contracted providers do outreach in East County. So this amendment would increase the funding to East County outreach programs by $600,000. The offset is additional placement out of shelter. At that level, at $13,000 a head, that would result in 46 fewer people exiting from shelter to housing from that program offer, which would reduce the shelter housing exit rate from 30% to 29%.
Yeah, and then just for additional context, this is in response to the cut to the HOPE team specifically. I think in totality, they were, I think it was around $700,000, and there's a lot of concerns around just outreach for the three smaller cities. So that would potentially cover that.
So I worked a lot with the HOPE team. I don't think they've ever been actually filled for FTEs, so I'd be curious what they actually have been operating with over the past 2 years, because I know there was at least one vacancy for like over a year. So it would be helpful to just, only because we're scrimping and scraping everywhere we can, of if 4 FTE is actually the need and what historically or most recently it has been for the HOPE team.
Yeah, and we can find that out. It's more or less just focus outreach in that part of the district. But.
Just as a reminder, the HOPE team worked out of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and that was a cut that they did, and it was not on the list of add backs from the office.
Right.
So this is basically the amendment number 28 was expanding outreach for Gresham. Or wait, I'm sorry. The 12B was expanding outreach for Gresham, and then this one is expanding it for the rest of East County?
It's continuing the work that they've been doing over the last year. So 12B is for the outreach team that the city of Gresham has.
Okay.
And then this amendment is for the three smaller cities. The outreach work for that's being done within the 3 smaller cities.
Okay. And this is on top of what's already included in our budget for outreach in East County?
Yes, so I was just pulling that up, but I want to make sure I have it right. So I follow up with you all of what, I just spoke to what we would allocate for Gresham and outreach. I will follow up with you all today about what would be set aside for East County already as an outreach zone, so you can have that information.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be helpful to have that for all districts so that we understand, or all zones, so that we understand the proportionality and what the outreach program looks like.
Got it.
Any other questions about 28? Okay, we already did 34, so now we're moving on to DCHS. Thank you, Anna. Okay, we're moving back in time to Amendment 2C. Okay, eviction prevention.
For preventing evictions.
Okay, so this is, all right, hello, DCHS. Oh, and we also have a homeless services impact, so Anna, don't go too far. Great, okay, so this creates an eviction prevention in-reach team modeled on Central City Concerns support team for eviction prevention to support home forward properties. It also is, this also consolidates eviction prevention legal services at the City of Portland. So we would be looking to have some kind of IGA with the City of Portland so that we would be giving some dollars to them so that they could do this similar to how they're spending eviction prevention dollars over here.
Sorry, let me narrate this one a
Yes,
little
please
bit,
do.
because it's
Yeah.
going to
I don't wanna speak.
have a pretty significant update. I just did not have time to do it over lunch. So the duplicative administrative components will come out of this amendment and move into a budget note, only because we don't know what the dollar amount is, so it hasn't been easy to figure out what that offsetting cost would be to then be able to use it as a pay-for. However, it's work that needs to be done, and it's a budget note that I'm working on with Jillian as well as Councilor Avalos, so that the city and county are on the same page. What this will do is have a total of 5 staff. 2 FTE will be intake specialists doing the Medicaid waiver, rent assistance benefit. 1 will be a county staff in DCHS doing really the coordination for the in-reach team and likely doing some services that are also billable. And then 2 will be contracted staff, 1 culturally specific. These are the things I'm looking for: cultural specificity for the Black community, behavioral health, peer. So some sort of combination of that. It'll be 2 FTE though. The reason Home Forward is explicitly called out is, 1, we know the need is greater and we can't do this with every affordable housing property that's in duress. But I think Home Forward in particular was the one that there's been some targeting of some particular buildings that are primarily Black, is why I'm looking for that cultural specificity. And then additionally, Home Forward is our largest affordable housing landlord, and we need, I think, to show, do what we can to try and keep those properties in the affordable portfolio, but then it would hopefully show some proof of concept and build on CCC's data to then use this in other affordable housing properties. Did I get that right? We've been doing a lot of back and forth with the number of FTE and how we can structure paying for it.
Yes, that was very well done. So yes, I don't have anything to add to your overview, but if there's specific questions, I'm here.
I'm trying to understand how this operationalizes. Can you kind of like walk me through that?
Yeah, so they would take referrals working with the landlord on where are people in arrears. Oftentimes, what I think we see folks doing is their arrears are being used as people are being evicted for non-payment instead of addressing behaviors, and they're only getting resident services. So this would be a referral to the team who could then go into a property, try and engage with a person. That's why I really want a peer on the team as well. See if there's some support they can provide, offer the opportunity for the rent assistance to help bring them into compliance, but also put them in a position to engage in services so that should somebody actually need behavioral health care, they've got that being provided by the person in the field, with the goal of linking them back to outpatient if that's the appropriate service level.
Okay, thanks.
And I think there's some idea that there may also be some folks, as this is out there, that might try to self-refer, and I want us to be flexible and open to what that entry point looks like, that it's not just based on the landlord.
I will say one thing that I learned and was very surprised by at my time at Disability Rights Oregon, they do a lot of, they represent individuals in the civil commitment process. The number of individuals who their triggering event to civil commitment was the actual eviction. So there really is a very significant number of individuals who it is a behavioral health crisis that leads them down the road to eviction. And it is really sad that it's not like addressed until, frankly, the sheriff's office shows up. And that's, that's very sad.
Okay. So I don't have a question for you because I think it's a pretty straightforward. We're taking some direct assistance dollars and using it to help leverage the work that will enable us to draw down more Medicaid dollars, which we're all in favor of. I think for the Homeless Services Department, that's where I have some more questions about the ability to use these dollars for this purpose.
Hello, Anna Plum, she, her pronouns, Deputy Director, HSD. Yeah, and I just put a mint in my mouth, so that was bad timing on my bad choices that I made. So the offset here for HSD is the Regional Strategies Implementation Fund, which is a specific fund within our SHS fund, and those funds need to be focused on enhancing coordination across the region, and they have 6 primary goals. We would need to work with Metro to ensure that this program aligns with those 6 goals. And eviction prevention is not in of itself a regional goal, so that is just something to flag. That's not like a deal breaker, but just flagging that it's not one of the stated goals. The impact of removing that RIF funding and using it for something else will depend on what we reduce. What we would likely do is reduce some of our landlord retention programs, which is enough of a cut that that program would cease to exist. So that includes removing the technical platform that we use to have people identify the affordable units and their requirements therein. And it would also cut our recruitment efforts and incentives for landlords to rent to our clients, which could result in fewer landlords renting to our clients without those incentives or that retention work.
So this is Housing Connector?
Yes.
Okay.
So I will say I've had many conversations with Metro on this, particularly the behavioral health component is of interest. I keep asking them for their money, and I won't stop asking them for their money. So if I find a different offset, I'll definitely bring it to the table. I think for me, what was the crux was it's not helpful for me for us to keep recruiting more landlords when we can't even stabilize people in our existing affordable housing. And so that was some of the why, just if folks were kind of wondering. I think the behavioral health component of it is the more attractive in the RIF conversation, but also one of the things I've heard from Metro that they're interested in is this ability to start figuring out how to help stabilize our affordable housing portfolio.
And I know it's described in the amendment as serving residents of home forward properties, which we know that there's some identified need there. I think I've heard from other housing providers that they are also interested in accessing similar dollars to help stabilize their position. So are you open to having it more than home forward? Do you think that this is only enough resource for the home forward?
I think the idea was to start there because we don't know what this will result in. I think the 2 intake specialists that are part of the team, it may not be the full InReach team, but there is the ability to access and help with the rent assistance component. So part of what I've been talking with the director about is I want to write it in a way that leaves the flexibility for them to be responsive in the moment. So it may need some updated language, but I want the team to be able to serve other landlords as well. I think my concern with trying to do the InReach team, it's too small to do even 5 properties, frankly. So I think at the start it was let's focus and then see what works and what doesn't so we can adjust and expand in future years.
Yeah, I didn't introduce myself before, I didn't say much, but Rachel Pearl, she, her pronouns, Director, DCHS. I think that to the Commissioner's point, it is a small team, it's a new project, initiative, we don't say pilot. And, I think we're interested in this sort of collaboration between providers and an internal county team and drawing down more of the waiver. It is a different dynamic with sort of like regulated rental units. It's still totally possible. It's just the dollar amount is often less that we draw down just because they can't receive as much benefit as maybe someone in a regular market rate unit could. And so those are things that like we're working through in the process of identifying like how this will work. And then because they would be on site, it really, I think, minimizing how many places we're doing this at first as we're sort of learning and adjusting will make it much more successful. I think if it's highly successful, we have like an opportunity there to look at what way we might be able to expand that. And anyone can, that's eligible can apply for the waiver. And we are working, I think we are really fortunate. Miles Sled on our team, just shout out to Miles. He's really amazing. He's doing amazing work. He's really, enthusiastic about helping everyone get access to the waiver. And so I just want to say that there's opportunities there that are outside of this for DCHS to continue to work with our providers and partners to help them understand how they can better access the waiver for people that live in their residence. So I think that's an important component as well. This doesn't just mean that they're the only ones. We also know that some people may not qualify, and so trying to tap into other eviction prevention dollars as well. I think we're just looking at, obviously partnering with our partners at the Homeless Services Department, working with Jillian and their team and all of you to slow the inflow. And there's a lot of different ways in which we want to do that.
And are we doing any rental assistance or the Medicaid drawdown for rental assistance with some of these home forward type properties or other subsidized properties right now?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's not, it's because that people have applied and they've received that. And we actually saw quite a few people in that first round. That's why our drawdown was lower than we expected because the amount was capped.
Gotcha.
For those folks. So where we thought we would draw down a much higher amount when we did the math on like market rate units, we actually saw so many people apply for the waiver that were in more regulated rental units that then now we saw a smaller drawdown of the overall waiver amount.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you both. That was Amendment 2C. Now we're going to go to 3B.
So 3B is a package around preschool for all.
Why did you leave? We can get you coffee.
So $500,000 for clinical supervision. This would support Balmer Institute students being placed and serving in preschool for all sites. We had a really good conversation with them at times like, I don't know, yesterday. It was probably 2 weeks ago. And then the second piece of this is addressing the permitting barriers as a one-time only limited duration position with the City of Portland to help our teachers who are trying to open new preschools get through the permitting barriers that they have. And this is something that I've had conversations with Council President Dunphy on that what needs to happen on that side of the river. So this will not be news to City of Portland. I've also spoken and had some support from a couple other councilors on this idea. And I'll leave it to you to talk about impacts.
Thanks, Commissioner. So I think we're excited about exploring this opportunity with Balmer Institute, which I think is, as we know, it's a shortage of opportunities for folks who are trying to enter the field to do their placements for their education. And so being able to provide that as part of PFA would be a benefit both to the program, but also to inflow of new folks entering the field. So we're interested in pursuing that. I think we're looking at that position being in the preschool and early learning division. And so that there's there's a great opportunity there. I think and then we have heard, as you all have heard, many struggles for our preschool providers navigating the permitting process, and that has led to folks having long delays or struggles at getting approval. So that's been of interest. We had our partners at LIF, the low-income, now I'm just going to blank on what that stands for right now, but anyway, our Build Up Oregon partners and Craft 3 partners brought a presentation for Commissioner Singleton around just sort of what they've done in other jurisdictions, other areas around the country related to removing those barriers, and this is an recommendation they also had that this would help in that way. And I think both of these we're looking at from a limited duration to sort of see what that looks like, particularly as we get closer to universal. We're not sure, if that's going to slow the need. I do know there's a lot of sort of restoration projects in some of the preschools that are existing, so it's not that we won't see the same number. We might see different types of projects, but I think it's good for us to evaluate that over the next year if that ends up being approved and see if the need has shifted or changed.
Maybe for Commissioner Singleton or maybe for you. Who is going to provide the clinical supervision?
So we'd have to hire someone for that. And then in working in partnership with our new partnership for the mental health support for Preschool for All, there would be sort of a coordinated process for that.
Is that the Morrison group that is that the shift that's happening?
Yeah, the shift that's happening is still in process.
So I'm just playing this out because I'm used to the model in a public schools system where you have supervision for somebody who's like in training, so the student teacher, but generally they're in a classroom with a certified teacher, then there's a very clear set of, it's not like the teacher leaves, the certified teacher leaves, they're actually in the classroom full-time with the student teacher. So I'm trying to think, is this the type of model, and how is that?
I'd like to speak to that since I'm a clinician. So that's not the model for clinical social work or behavioral health positions. It's often that you have to have a licensed clinical supervisor who can do your supervision, do regular check-ins with you. You have a required amount of meetings, but you often do your client care one-to-one. So the model, unfortunately, isn't quite the same in behavioral health work. So this aligns with all of our types of behavioral health anywhere that we have student interns.
So just to play it out, so somebody from the Ballmer Institute who's in the process of getting their certificate or degree, they would be at a preschool site working with a specific student? I was just trying to understand how this works.
I think, so I will say that we're still working through, we've had some meetings with Ballmer, we're in process of shifting to a little bit of a different model, and so some of this will be like worked out through these partnerships that we're exploring, but yes, they would be working on site, and then they would have they need a clinical supervisor who they can process like what's happening, and to Commissioner Singleton's point, she's got that experience. So, being able to learn and grow and expand their skills in an actual real setting with working with children.
So the clinical supervision is a county FTEs, or we're contracting with somebody to do that?
Yeah, I think right now we have it as a county FTE. As part of the plan. However, I think based on what we're doing right now in our process, there's flexibility in that if we decide it's better in a different way. I think what we are hearing from the Ballmer Institute, what I think, Commissioner, you've been flagging is just the consistency and ensuring that we have, stability in a clinical supervisor who can receive these students, provide them with that supervision and support, and make sure that that's stable so that we can continue to bring more students through so they can receive their credentials and then start working in the field. So I think that's really the sort of problem that we're trying to solve. And I think, being a county FTE does allow us to sort of ensure that we have consistency in that role and have a little bit of more, stability in that sense and oversight in that position. And so I think that's the thought right now. However, because we're in this process, I think we are, evaluating what makes the most sense, and it depends on whether or not this moves forward, and then we can do some additional work to solidify that.
So do you envision this converting to FTE, the 500,000? Or,
Yes, yep. And I think that's a piece of what, I think this dollar amount may come down. We just, it was at least initially a placeholder, so a little bit more work to do.
Yes, I just asked someone on my team the other day to get us what that salary fully loaded would look like, and so we can plug that in.
What types of degrees would this be an appropriate fit that Balmer is doing? I'm just wondering what type of students.
So it's, I don't know if you know, I'm probably going to get the name wrong, but the certification that they just were able to get with the state, it's specifically for serving school-aged or youth through their accredited program now, well, state accredited program. So it is those specific students. This is not about behavioral health apprenticeship. This is just specifically the curriculum that the Balmer Institute is now moving students through. So I think it was last year, the first year that they had, that they got the bill passed so that they have state certification. And it's specifically behavioral health care. Sorry, I should have said
So
that
it's
part.
childhood behavioral health.
Yes.
Certificate. Is it a master's level? I just
Yeah. No.
don't know exactly what.
No.
Okay.
It's not a master's level credentialing, yeah.
So it could be entry into this type of work for a lot of folks. Okay.
Yeah.
I think what is, and I don't know, again, this might be for you, Commissioner, or for you, Rachel, but what is Balmer's role going to be? Obviously, it will be their students who will be taking these internships, but, when I think about college internships programs, there's administration that happens on the school side as well. And so did they say but for these county dollars, that they wouldn't be able to do this program, or what is their administration role going to be on this?
Yes, so they will do the role of all the pieces that the student needs, and then making sure that the supervisor has their specific credentials, and then they do kind of the regular check-ins as the student's moving through. The only reason we did not have students in our classrooms this past year is because we did not have anybody providing clinical supervision for them. And so the reason I brought this forward was Balmer saying, we really have students who want to be able to be in preschool classrooms, but they have to have clinical supervision, and Balmer doesn't have their own, no School of Social Work or anyone has their own clinical supervision. So it's always on the placement organization to provide the supervision for the student.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. All right, any other questions on this?
I'm curious about the permitting, and this is just it seems like the city of Portland, that we shouldn't have to pay the city of Portland $287,000 to remove barriers. I mean, just this isn't a comment on the amendment, it's just a comment on maybe the permitting system, that would be required. I mean,
I so agree. I feel like I've been hearing about the broken permitting system since I moved to Portland, and I just don't see the fix coming. But I wish that permitting worked differently.
yeah. I wish we could make an ask of them before we agree to put $287,000 into it, that they actually have a permitting system that works for.
I started there. I really did. I started there with, hey, we're having this problem, when I heard it from providers in District 2, and how long it was taking them to get through the process and the amount of money they were having to float or take out personal loans or loans on their houses to be able to stay afloat and open the preschool once they finally got through all the permitting. And there just has not been a clear fix at the city that isn't hey, the best way to do this is having a concierge service, essentially. I see Jillian kind of laughing, because I feel like permitting was your jam before.
If only you fixed it.
So this would be for, just the use then, we would be hiring a county FTE to? Okay,
We'd be sending money to the city so that they would create a new position for this one.
I'll just say it's outrageous.
Are they, having personally been in the purgatory of the city of Portland permitting, hopefully before Jillian fixed it all, is there any commitment from the city for like preferential review? Because I didn't know, they do have a dashboard and you can see what the weight is, and depending on what the components of the permit have, like, I don't even know how many days out we are for electrical or whatever. I just looked at the deck and we're 41 days. And that is just structural, that doesn't have to go through multiple different, so I'm just wondering, like, I totally understand why. I would also be nervous to have somebody who can only bug their coworkers so much if there's not some degree of like a agreement that like,
Yeah.
yes, we let you.
That's why the cost is what it is this is a level of position that has the ability to do all of those pieces and can, so it's not having to wait in line with everybody else. They can actually just streamline the whole,
Cool, can I
of the
get
whole
my
thing.
deck done?
Can you what?
Can I-
you get your deck done?
Kidding. I don't expect any preferential treatment.
I just want to say, like, this has been something that we have been working on since Preschool for All. Like, there used to be a position just for childcare at the city. I know Tia Williams, hi Tia, she worked for me back in 2018 and 19. And, you know, as we were ramping this up and talking about the needs around facilities for preschools, like, it was great because they did have this position and they don't have it any longer. So it's not, you know, it doesn't feel great to be sending money to the city for them to do something that they should be doing, but, and yet, like, this will also help us, I think, you know, reach the goals that we want to have for the Preschool for All program, both in terms of reaching universal access, but also the quality pieces that the facilities and the environment is so important for, so.
Have they, this is such an aside, but it's related. Have they addressed the e-occupancy like, we had had many conversations with the city over there, you can to have a preschool, you need e-occupancy. It doesn't mean the whole building has to be e-occupancy. Has there been any fix to that weird issue? Have you heard, this maybe is just an aside, but it really limits what is even possible.
So there was a head shake from Director Pearl that it has not been. So we will continue.
All right, if we could add that as
Yeah.
to work on.
Yes, like here.
Yes, I think it's been the same barrier that is co-locating childcare with affordable housing development is a similar
Well,
issue.
that's a state level issue that also BOLI can do some rulemaking around too. So lots of work there to go. Thank you, Rachel Pearl. I'm going to keep us moving. So thank you, everyone. We're moving on to 17B, which is also DCHS, so don't go far. All right, so this is a Commissioner Moyer's amendment, 17B, ADVSD long-term Medicaid support, adds funds to, and so this is a restoration of a cut that also resulted in a loss of some Medicaid funding, and so adds some, and it takes some from the opioid settlement offset as the revenue impact. So Director Pearl.
I couldn't remember how I think, right?
Yeah, so we love this amendment. So restoring 3 filled positions to our ADVSD division, and these The reason why, obviously you all know our challenging situation across the county, but in DCHS in particular, trying to strike that balance with Medicaid match funds makes it really difficult. We aren't required to provide this service, so when we look at, the positions that we kept and positions that we put up for reduction, it's really difficult. It does not mean that it's not a value judgment on the work that these folks do, though. It's really important, and we've heard a lot from just the other case managers across the team that these positions provide them with so much support as we see significant reductions across the board, and the expectations remain the same. For ADVSD in regards to expectations in our contract to the state, it takes a toll, obviously, on our team. So any of these positions that provide additional support or they can go to access additional services for the clients and consumers that they're serving, that's really important. So, and it's obviously great ROI for county dollars when you look at, how much we need to come up with from a general fund versus what that will produce in Medicaid match. So. Feels like a win-win.
Okay, any questions on that one? Any additional comments? Okay, and then this is similarly in terms of restoring things that that also tap into Medicaid is amendment number 25, also Commissioner Moyer. So this restores a 1.0 ADVSD housing navigator position and receives, that would generate $116,652 in Medicaid revenue as well. Do you want to talk about the positive impacts of restoring this? And then I'm looking for John W. is he here? Okay, we'll see, to talk about some of the offset impacts.
So, so this position was 0.5, and I think in conversations with Commissioner Moyer, interest of restoring it to 1.0, which would allow them to take approximately 200 referrals for older adults who have complex needs in supporting them with securing housing. So that was a position that the funding was reduced by the state, but it is matchable. We did confirm that we could match that those dollars, and so again, it's a similar situation as the other three, where a smaller dollar amount of county general fund will result in a position that does provide a tremendous amount of service to our older adults who have complex needs and are in need of housing.
I don't understand the state on this particular one, because we are seeing, we have for a while, but I think it's getting worse, that seniors and people with disabilities are actually moving into more costly, more restrictive settings because of how difficult it is to find independent housing when your income is so restricted. And by definition, these are people on Medicaid, so they have very, very limited resources. Often SSI, or SSDI. So there is one issue, but I think the other one again is I'm very concerned about the really uncompensated by the federal government workload increase that everyone who is doing Medicaid eligibility is about to have put on them. And all, these very specialized workers, that work still has to get done. Or people will be in more restrictive or hard to find placements when the needs are complex. And so, I don't understand the state. This, to me, saves them money to be able to keep people independent. But we don't control their decision-making, and I understand that they too have budget restrictions, but I chose to want to prioritize this buyback, not just because I think the service is so valuable, which I do, but the idea that we're going to be doing every 6-month reevaluations and add additional work to our case managers. It's, to me, anybody who's going to be having to do eligibility work on Medicaid, I am worried about your workload. And I'm I think it's an atrocious federal policy.
Can you send some follow-up with the outcomes of the current position? I see the number of referrals, but that doesn't tell me what the product is. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And John W., do you want to come down? Are you ready? Do you need a minute? Do you know what we're talking about? We'll fill you in. So this is just, we're talking about Amendment 25, which does a restoration in DCHS, ADVSD, but the offset for that is the .5 position and the Office of Sustainability. So just, and I think this is a communications position.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's a communications position in our team that specializes in reaching out to county employees and the public about the work of the office, but more particularly helping us communicate vital information about programs that are available that can help the community access, energy assistance is a recent example. We've also done lots of resource fairs in the past. We've had reduced capacity in that position this year, so we haven't engaged in that work as we have in the past years, but helping to, organize community events that folks can attend and, connect with resources in the community. So it's a pretty dynamic position, and of course, we're also focused on our own enterprise-wide sustainability, so ensuring that we meet our commitments around recycling and energy conservation, and that position is also responsible for those tasks as well.
Okay. All right. Questions? Any questions for sustainability? Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate you being here. All right, moving on to the next amendment, which is just the very next one, Amendment 26, Immigrant Legal Assistance and Mini Grants. Commissioner Singleton.
So this one is, it feels weird to say a restoration because we did it as a one-time only out of contingency, but this is essentially continuing the immigrant legal defense work as well as, or legal assistance work, and then the mini grants that we did for providers who were not currently contracted with the county, so we could get to some of the smaller organizations. And it uses the revenue amendment as the offset. This is, I think you and I talked about, this is the SOAR program.
Great. So so we do have money in my budget for immigrant and refugee federal impacts. And so I'm wondering if
Yes.
there is some way that we can allocate dollars within that.
So Chair, you said this last time,
Yep.
and what I had understood of that, in your budget, is that it has a new name than what it had last year, and from what I could understand, it's about refugee resettlement as opposed to the larger work, and I've asked about this a couple of times.
So this is, okay, well,
The Immigrant Resilience Fund, it has been renamed a few times, so you're not wrong about that, as the circumstances have changed. So just, I think the prior titles didn't make sense moving forward. It is a little over $300,000 that is primarily direct client assistance to support folks who are impacted by immigration enforcement. So I think there's like alignment. I think what I understand, this is a request to directly fund the legal services part of that versus the direct client assistance part of that, which is whether they're connected to legal services or not, would be the 300,000, I think it's like 325, I'm not sure, I'm not looking at it right now, but that's in the director's office in DCHS.
okay. Let's have more conversation about this one. Okay. Any other questions on this? All right, 27, Sun Schools. So this is a full restoration of the Sun School program, $1.2 million, which comes from countywide administrative and support reductions. You know who I'm going to be calling. So here he comes. The impact of making this restoration is preventing the closure of 9 Sun services at PPS locations and 2,000 children from losing access to Sun. All right, hello, Chris. So love to hear about conversations about how this,
Yeah, the impacts?
the impacts and just how this would actually work from a, like, how do we identify these dollars and all of that?
Yeah. So first, I want to highlight the fact this is on top of 1.5 million already. I do appreciate the idea. So what we're really talking about is 2.7 million overall, because 1.5 already happened this year. I've had conversations with almost all of you about this. I do appreciate the idea. I expect that shared services, you all know, is already happening. I do expect that there will be continued efficiencies. The risk on this one is moreover about highlighting these positions before the design and before implementation. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I highlight. So for example, cutting FTE too early before knowing exactly where we're going, the work is happening. It's really going to pick up a lot this summer. But cutting too early before that, also dedicated FTE that will be part of maybe transition, part of support, especially support part, because as you're moving from one process to another, it's not just an overnight thing. So there is going to be a bit of a transition support that needs to happen there as well. Those things need to be realized. And I would hate for us to find ourselves having to add FTE back or moving FTE out that we find out that we actually needed for a little bit longer. So the process is happening. I would appreciate a more gradual approach, maybe throughout the year. I can check in or something like that. But that's what I wanted to highlight impact-wise. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, I do believe that this is difficult. I did not put this forward with the belief that this was easy or would not actually probably cause some impact to service. I've tried to be honest that I do think that this is a difficult thing. I do not dictate how it's done, because that is your role. And so, yes, it has a dollar amount. It does not have a timeline. It does not have a number of positions. It does not say what positions that is. So, because I think that you're right, this is a process that has to be thought through. I also want to make it clear that this is viewed as one time only, because it then rolls into our internal service rate. Although it's general fund and it's ongoing dollars, the intention for next year is that those efficiency savings are passed to departments in a minusculely smaller rate. As for the Sun School portion, I don't know what's going to happen with all of our K-12 partners. I certainly think that PPS is going to have to close some schools. We don't know what those are. There's a very real likelihood that they are Sun schools. Does not necessarily mean they're ours, but so I do understand that this is not a super long-term stable solution to Sun schools, but I don't want, and I don't know which schools PPS is, I don't know if they know for sure what schools that they're going to end up closing. But I do think that realistically, there will be less Sun schools next year, which does lower the cost. And we do need to have a conversation long-term about the balance of what is a sustainable amount of Sun school. I know that that was the goal of the chair here. I think it might be a little higher number than what was in your budget in perpetuity, but I don't want to make closure decisions and then find out actually they cut 3 schools over here that we kept Sun for and lost other ones. And I think this is just a thing that I think a lot about. I like the model very much of Sun schools being a hub for families. I think that it is done so much for families in Multnomah County, and, yes, there is one in my district that is slated to close. I still, even if I could only save 5 schools and none of them were in my district, I'd still propose this, because I am very worried about families right now. I think this is the most inequitable economy of my lifetime, where those who are doing really well are doing astronomically well, and those who work for a living are struggling more and more and more and more. And these programs, just the access to after school alone is keeping families afloat. And, that's why it made it pretty high on my list. I think so many of the services we do are so important. That's why it's really important to me.
I agree, and I appreciate the amendment, and I think part of the budget note that I mentioned a little bit the other day is to have that exact conversation. I just met with PPS 2 days ago and had the same conversation with them. It's just the timing's off of, like, they don't know which schools are closing yet either, and so that's really unfortunate that we couldn't sync this up in some way. But the other thing that I asked them to start thinking about, as well as some of our Sun School providers, has been, how do we think about this differently? What are the opportunities? Are there catchment areas? I know folks jump to, then it's expensive to transport people. I get that, but let's have the conversation about what it will take to make this a sustainable program and be that hub. And I will say, one of the things that I think we have a lot of opportunity for, with coming back to the constant 6-month reauthorization of my entitlement benefits, is that we have a set place where folks who are impacted are coming for food pantry, for after-school activities, that we can then deploy some folks to actually do reminders of how you have to do your reauthorization, making sure that, I think there's ways we could better leverage Sun School activities for wider county services, because we have a place where the people who are impacted are already gathering regularly. So some of this is in the budget note. I think we were working on refining that before we bring it forward, but just to know there's a little more of the kind of trying to get at the longer term plan.
Yeah, and the addition that I wanted to make sure was included in there is that, like, we have to have a convening of all the funders and really looking at how we are funding schools across the county in a way that recognizes kind of some of the geographic changes that have happened over the years, the changes in demographics in terms of, like, which schools were potentially now serving a wealthier, set, or whatever, and just across all of the funders, because that right now I don't think that work has been done collaboratively in a while. So, and I guess one of the questions I have maybe for you is, like, whatever we end up doing with Sun Schools, what would it look like if we heard that there was going to be a school closure by PPS that was a Sun school? Would we look to move that to a different school, or how does that, have you had those conversations yet?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, we're beginning to have a lot of those conversations, so I don't want to commit to exactly what that would look like, because there's a lot of factors that depend. It depends, I think, on what the current circumstances are, where the resources are currently allocated, what does that create in terms of that catchment area issue, gaps in particular neighborhoods. There's a lot of factors that both, the program, DCHS, again, shout out to Walter Rodriguez Salinas, who has done a beautiful job managing Sun and managing this process. And I think just very intentional, but then also our partners at the district and our partners who actually run the program. So, like, this is very much a partnership that requires a lot of intentionality and conversation. So I think there is going to be, we've already committed to that. We've already been meeting with our Sun providers. Bless you. And so, sorry. Just. We give an award for a unique sneeze. And so I think that's, we've already committed to, we want to have those deeper conversations. They've said they're concerned about, year after year cuts. It is of, we've stated when DCHS takes significant cuts, we have to go to Sun, because that's where majority of our county general fund is. And so whether that's large or small, but that's an issue for us. That's why there's concerns, and we want to think about that strategically with our partners. What I can say from all of you, because this is the lump sum, the entirety, is that each elementary school would cost $150,000 to restore. A high school is $161,000 to restore. So, just to have that information of, there's the entire piece, and then I know there's also individual schools that folks have had interest in restoring, and so just want to give you those dollar amounts as well. But we are already planning on those conversations. We're already committing to leaning in more consistently in person. There's a lot of requests for like in-person meetings. We want to have some mapping with our providers, we've done a lot. I mean, again, Walter led an amazing process with the funders prior to the RFPQ process. Was a year long of engagement to figure out what we need to do, what's the priority for Sun. And so there's a lot of collaboration and community building in that space. And so there's a great foundation to build on, but this year there's going to be a lot more of that.
So just comment on the Sun Schools. So I'm very supportive of us buying it back because this is the sort of, for working parents, a super critical piece of the sort of overall safety net, and I think affordability also a piece within the county. Chair, your comment about the having discussion among the funders, I was somewhat surprised by the city's list because while I felt like on most accounts we tracked what I know about most of our schools in the equity index, it did not seem like the city used the same equity index if you just looked at the rankings. And some of ours that were, I think, a little aberrations, I think it's because the district made some, thinking about some future planning. And having said that, the issue of closures, we're going to know before next year's budget cycle because they are going to have to do their process. They have to do it early enough before all the forecasting for students of where they're going to go to school. So generally, that should precede our budget. So we should know what schools exist, and it will be more of a school closures. There'll probably be consolidations is what they're called. So there'll still be a school. So maybe you get a consolidation where you are like one of the, they're both Sun schools, and so you're just consolidating into, you actually have a larger population that you're just serving but one provider. So I think we'll know a lot more before the next time around. I mean, none of the schools that we're proposed to fund here are going to close this school year. So, I mean, we're good. So it's really the future ones, and I think actually it may create some efficiencies for how the county supports Sun schools, but I definitely think we should have a conversation with the cities because some of them I felt were not where you naturally would need the most support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly why I think everybody needs to sit down and have that, make sure we're making decisions with the same frame. Okay, so I think my biggest concern about this, obviously, like, I think I said this when I was releasing my budget, this was the hardest cut that I had to make because I believe in this work and what it does for our families, our youth, and our communities. And I think my big concern with the restoration is, are these dollars real? And what does that look like? And so I want to continue to have conversations with Chris and just like make sure, and if we maybe are like 1.5 feels like a bridge too far, is there a way we can get to something that's maybe more realistic and recognizes kind of the pace we're at for some of the work that we're doing internally? Okay. All right. Thank you. Our next one is eviction prevention legal services. I'm so sorry.
That's
I
okay.
didn't know. I thought we were all done.
Not a question, just something that would be helpful is, this isn't the only reduction that we see that impacts, and so just understanding the totality would be helpful. Because there's some places that I'm like, as we have this conversation, I might be willing to trade my offset into this one. Just understanding that would be helpful, not in the moment, but.
Oh, yeah, I was going to do it next time I came up, but, okay, I know where you're at. Thank you.
And then similarly, where there's multiple reductions to specific offices, I don't know if you've got multiple reductions. I want to understand total impact of FTE, like what will be the FTE left? That would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, and Christian might have a better, so I know my office had several, was tagged in a couple different ones. We had HSD, and it's been up here like 5 times talking about the different ones to the $10 million one-time only housing placement dollars. So I know that one has, and so I think that's another area. The administrative services is another area. I can't, off the top of my head, those are the ones that come to mind.
Christian Elkin, County Budget Director, we do have a spreadsheet for that.
Yes. That's also, you need a T-shirt that says that. I have a spreadsheet for that. All right. Great, thank you. We're going to move on to number 29, eviction prevention legal services.
Yes, this is an amendment that we put forward, and it's restoring the program offer 25131C, and it's for eviction prevention works, which ensures legal representation, emergency rental assistance, and housing stabilization services, and that's carried out through, I believe, MPD and through the department, DCHS.
So I will say, we've started a conversation, because I know we have a similar amendment, we just have different offsets, so I think it still makes sense to talk about, but we see that and we're working on it.
And I'm turning it over to Anna and Director Pearl.
Yes, so this amendment would, I think this was one-time only funding, I believe, that was SHS funding. And so it would allow for 186 households to receive legal support during an eviction process. Pretty straightforward.
Hello again. So the offset here is the additional placement out of shelter program offer. The amount listed of 210,164 would result in 16 fewer people leaving shelter for housing. It does not significantly impact the rate with just this, this offset.
Okay, any questions about this? I'm glad to hear that you guys are having this, because I was like, did we do this one? No, we did not. Okay.
Yeah, just a question around eviction prevention, legal services. I get lost in like what everyone's doing. The city of Portland does legal services, do they?
Yes.
Which is not D4, which would be an unmet need. I'm just trying to, like,
Yes.
in my mind, understand who does what.
You will see, I didn't want to try and bring forward the eviction prevention work group's recommendations during the budget because it feels a little too confusing. But yes, both do this work, both fund it, and both are contracting separately with the same legal providers. So that is part of what I was trying to get at the cost savings. That just isn't going to happen before we pass our budget, but you will see some recommendations out of this group around, let's knock it off. It's really taxing on the CBOs to do this. We got to figure it out.
Yeah, okay. And then I'm just, I totally support that. And don't want to leave our non-City of Portland residents without this. So I just, in whatever happens, I just want to make sure that we're covering the whole county. Thank you.
And for the rest, so this restores the SHS part because we did continue to allocate general fund dollars to legal services in the FY27 budget, but there was a cut for the SHS dollars that were used for this. Is the amount, like, is there a way that we could say the amount left, which is 128,000, could be dedicated to areas outside of Portland if we're, I'm just trying to figure out what yours does and then how we might be able to ensure that we continue to cover that.
When I take the language out about city, county need to figure this out, and that becomes a budget amendment, our amendments are the same.
Okay.
Just a different offsetting pay for.
Okay, remind me, what was your offset?
It's a fabulous question.
Yeah, okay.
I believe, isn't it direct client assistance for, I thought it was direct client assistance, swapping direct client assistance for legal support. I'm pretty sure that's your offset.
It is, yes. So it is taking some existing eviction prevention rent assistance and
Oh, that's
moving it
right.
into the legal services.
Gotcha, okay, great. Okay, we'll look forward for an updated amendment then. Okay, great, thank you. All right, that concludes DCHS. Good job, everyone. We've got two healthcare amendments, or health department amendments. We did 22. We did?
Yes, it was also in the homeless
Oh, it was.
services category.
Oh, well, staff's mistake just saved us some time. And then we have 24. So we have one more, and then we're actually going to start the agenda. We were supposed to start at 1 p.m. today. So, and thank you, District Attorney's Office, for being here for the whole thing. Okay, so Amendment 24. And this is kind of a multi-part amendment. So Commissioner, instead of me trying to explain it, I'm going to ask you to walk through. This is the CARES, LGBTQIA2S+, and gun violence amendment.
Yes. Okay, so this is within our direct services part of our behavioral health department. And it is a budget program offer that has multiple programs in it, so this can be a bit confusing. But all of these positions, except for the LGBTQIA2S+ consultant, are direct service. What is missing is how much they bill for. We're working on it, right? It's gonna happen. Health Department? Bueller? Yes, we've got, great, thank you. So that is my hope, is that number shrinks. But I'll start in order. The CARES positions, these are two clinical, I want to say culturally specific, or they just happen to be people, they are culturally specific, yes, they are, who work with families whose children have been evaluated for child abuse. I assume that we don't work with families whose children weren't abused, but whatever. In that bridge of how does a family get connected to the services that they need to recover from this level of trauma. So these are clinicians. They work directly with families, often families who are in a situation they never expected to be in and really unaware of how to navigate moving forward. It is not employees of CARES. They are Multnomah County employees. And these are families from marginalized communities who may have resistance to engaging in clinical services. The LGBTQIA2S+ consultant in this direct clinical services has an expertise in gender-affirming care, particularly for youth, and is used, has provided direct clinical services, has that expertise, but also is providing consultation to other clinicians, both in this department and in the schools that we work with through our school-based mental health program. They help navigate the very significant challenges youth experience when navigating their gender identity, and how to navigate those services and systems. And the third line item and position is adding back the third gun violence counselor, again, clinician level individual. This is the individual who who focuses and is a KSA in the Latinx community. If we lose this position, we will not have a counselor who works for gun violence prevention for the Latinx community. That is how layoffs happen. It just ends up being losing that particular expertise. And I really felt like that's a community that I did not want to not have somebody connected who speaks the language of, well, Spanish, not the language of Spanish. And it would just be a hole that I don't think our African-American or African immigrant gun violence counselors can fill. So that's the reason for that restoration. And if I mischaracterize any of that, please feel free.
Yeah, so I'm going to invite the health department to come on up because.
Look, they're right here.
Yeah, because they are here. So I'm going to take us back a little bit because we had a lot of conversations about this, obviously. The program offer from FY26 had a significant amount of other funds. And then but for FY27, there was a pretty big decrease in the other funds. So can you just remind us what those other funds were and what kind of precipitated the significant decrease in those funds for FY27?
Yes, hello. For the record, I'm Jessica Jacobson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm in an interim role as a deputy director with our behavioral health division. I don't have my detailed financial information in front of me. I didn't bring the right thing down, but I will say a significant amount of our gun violence behavioral health response program was funded with beginning working capital, which has been being spent down over the years, and so we simply did not have that resource as we were doing our budget planning for FY27. So I think that resulted in us proposing the entire elimination of that program. And then we also had to make some decisions across multiple other program offers related to our county financial agreement with the state. But I think that most of our CARES and the LGBTQ position were general fund, but that those reductions were made to just meet the overall constraints.
So would beginning working capital show up as other funds in the budget, Christian Elkin? I'm just looking at the program offer, and for FY26 other funds, it was like 1.4 million, and then for 27 other funds is 378,000. And then Jessica was saying that a lot of at least for the gun violence reduction work was beginning working capital. So I'm just curious would that have shown up in other funds?
We will look into that. The health department also reorganized some of their program offers, so sometimes that year over year is a little bit misleading. So I need to make sure that that's not just part of the reorganization and those funds went somewhere else versus an actual reduction in the program offer.
Okay. This uses one of the revenue amendments for the restoration. Okay, so we don't have any. Oh, are you coming back?
For the record, Justin Black, he and pronouns deputy COO. I do want to actually give Jessica a second to talk about the positions, the Northwest Cares positions, and what they do and how they're embedded in the program, because I think that's really important context, especially, Commissioner, to your question about the reimbursable piece of this.
Sure. So the CARES Northwest positions, it's 1.9 FTE. It's 2 positions, both of which do have culturally specific KSAs, and those 2 positions are embedded within a team that is within the legacy system that does the CARES Northwest services. And it's a specific family support team, so they are doing some crisis intervention, some suicide assessments, connection to additional services, the psychoeducation, things like that. They are not currently, so they are embedded in that other provider's team. They are documenting in their system. And my understanding is that that provider is not doing any billing for that team. So currently they are not like a billing revenue generating program. And also because they're outside of our EHR and our actual direct service system, we cannot bill for those services right now. So we certainly can have a conversation with the CARES program to better understand if there's maybe some billing opportunity that's not being fully leveraged, but that would be down the road. Yeah. Is that what you were hoping I would speak to? Okay.
I will just say from experience, it is hard to bill for this type of service. So if we have this conversation, hope it's very much from a what might be possible, not a we expect, because I honestly, I was just, as we were talking about it, thinking back to doing this crisis work with kids, and I didn't have one case that I could have billed on.
Thank you for saying that.
And Chair, I wanted to address your question. So the program lost about $800,000 in beginning working capital and about $200,000 in other funding. I believe that was the state funding, and that was the moving around of CEFA dollars to address the prioritization of aid and assistance civil commitment.
CEFA, we both grow.
Because it's
the worst.
Yeah, we all agree. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so that brings us to the end of the Health Department amendments. So now we're going to move on to public safety. So we have 5 amendments under public safety, Amendment 5, Amendment 7B, Amendment 23, Amendment 30, and Amendment 32. And so we'll start with Amendment number 5. That is yours, Commissioner Brim Edwards, Senior Legal Assistant. And we're all flipping to, so this restores,
I can go ahead and.
restores the senior legal assistant position in the district attorney's office.
So it restores 3 current positions that are senior legal assistants. They're represented by Local 88, and it prevents layoffs. I know we have the team from the district attorney's office here that could talk about this. But really, this is about improving efficiency, supporting timely case processing, and increasing the capacity. As we all know, in any situation, you want to have people sort of practicing at their highest level. So you have the deputy DAs doing work that is within the scope of their job, and then you have support from the senior legal assistants to provide that backup. So without those 3 positions, you're going to have deputy DAs and other senior leaders doing work that could be classified as administrative. And I want to offer, if anyone from your office wants to come up and speak more broadly about this, you can.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. Nathan Vasquez, District Attorney for Multnomah County. Thank you so much for having me here this afternoon. This is really an outgrowth. We had the county funded the Coraggio Group study several years back about the need to rebalance how our support staff is developed out, and then the work that the attorneys are doing. And so this is one that is a purely efficiency-based, and it is one that is deeply needed. I know this from my time working as a line attorney that this work, if you are spending your time running down exhibits, putting exhibit stickers on, doing all the things that you would hope a legal assistant would do, if you're doing that as an attorney, you are not working on your case, you're not getting that work done. And I'll tell you that right now my attorneys are, I would say more than ever, under the strain of heavy caseloads, and their time is very finite, and it's very valuable. And we tried to reorganize under our budget to put these positions together. These positions are purely designed to make us the most efficient run office as we possibly can be, because right now I would say that we're wildly missing the mark in this area.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, Adam Brown, Chiefs of Staff to the District Attorney. I'll just add that under the terms of the Multnomah County Prosecuting Attorneys Association collective bargaining agreement, there is a meet and confer period around layoffs. So we provided notice to the Prosecuting Attorneys Association that there are positions at risk. And yesterday I met with MCPAA as part of this meet and confer to hear some of their thoughts about our budget priorities. And this was at the top of their list. They want this support from our legal staff. We have long-range plans to do some organizational development work to professionalize our workforce and equip them to support the attorneys in this way. But this amendment helps us move in that direction of becoming more efficient and having the quality of workforce that we want. It also is a satisfaction factor for our attorneys. I think they feel bogged down by some administrative work. And on the other side of that, it provides more meaning for our legal support staff to elevate the level of duties that are assigned to them and more meaningfully support the casework of our attorneys.
Okay.
We're good. Looks like the offset person is up here.
The offset person.
That's not you, Chris.
It is.
No.
It is Chris, it's Office of the COO. Yeah.
Oh,
I changed it.
oh, okay. I was still thinking it was transition. So the description, the amendment description at the top still says elected official transition budget. So we'll get that updated.
Okay, we'll get it updated.
Okay. Yes, yeah, no, that's fine. That's why I was confused. All right.
I mean, we're updating them like every day.
What? If only it was once a day.
Wait till I drop my F5.
Okay, great. So, okay, so what is the new pay? So it's, Commissioner, do you want to talk about the new pay for then?
The offset is $386,000 from, which is to pay for the 3 legal assistants, and the offset is out of the COO and the DCM. And as we've had the discussion over the my last 3 budget years, I think we've had a fair amount of additions at the top. And to me, this, if everybody's taking some reductions throughout the organization, this is a place where we've had a significant number of ads. So,
Okay, great. So Chris, do you want to come up here to talk about the impacts of this?
Y'all got me right up here, right next to him, huh, while I do this. Okay. Okay, so for me, no, it's all right, y'all decide. This is a bit of a litmus test, I think. So what I worry about here, the impacts, is a bit of undermining some of the strategic outcomes that we've been talking about forever, and things that we know that the community needs. We've been talking about these things, and my office is responsible for delivering those and have been doing so. I come up here and we talk about them regularly, and we talk about them in your offices as well. So particularly, this group that's being highlighted does things like the board priorities that are done by these positions. This is stuff like unified outreach. This is Medicaid revenue optimization. The strategic plan will be impacted here for the timeline. Continuous improvement. Everybody at this table has talked about that at some point. That position is vacant, and we will continue to not have it should we pull the dollars from this area. Organizational efficiency, such as accountability, procurement, we've talked about. We've talked about other structural efficiencies that we need throughout. Savings will compound over time. This is long-term things that we have talked about that are the right things to be talking about long-term, not short-term, because I'm afraid that at the end of this budget process, we're going to be still talking about the same things that we've been talking about for years, and I know that this department and the Spark team, my office, et cetera, there have been additions. We've talked about what the details of those additions are, but the office is here to do some of this transformative work that we have all agreed is important to do countywide. That's the purpose of the office. We have been delivering those things over the last year, and I've outlined what those things are. So I don't have anything against what's happening and, DA or any of that stuff, but it is my responsibility to come up here and talk about what the impacts will be. D2, you mentioned earlier about some of these compound things. This is one of a few. When you said, highlight if there's multiple areas. It'll take away just about everything that I've mentioned will either stop or be significantly delayed. That's all I got.
Great. Any questions for District Attorney's Office or Chris on the program or the amendment, what it's restoring, or the offset?
I would like to add one additional comment, and it's to say that I greatly appreciate the impacts on the COO's office and that long-term vision. And what I'm seeing right now is the impacts of today on crime victims. For example, these positions would directly service what we saw this last week. We had a trial with a serial rapist. We were partially successful, but we lost a fair amount of that. And it's the hours I saw my attorneys working were just not sustainable. And these are, we have serial rapists, we have serial murder cases that are coming up in this next year. These are what these positions will fund and will help and will be used as in these very issues that are impacting communities and victims right now. That's my plea and pitch for it. It's something we've talked about for several years with the board. This need, it has been a long-term need, but it has a very real impact right now today on victims and on our community.
Great.
Can I ask, did you consider different reductions in your office in order to keep these? And some in particular, I think I'd asked for some follow-up on the contractual services and wondering if there was any in there. One in particular that stood out to me was the St. Joseph's High School internship program, and not really clear on kind of, is that a local school? What is that particular program? It's only $39,000, so it doesn't get you there, but just wanting to understand maybe some of what were the other potential offsetting different reductions you could have made to keep these positions.
Yeah, sure, Commissioner, thank you so much for that question. So the creation of these positions was actually the result of an internal reallocation, and we hoped that through that process, we were demonstrating the willingness to make hard organizational choices in furtherance of this kind of goal. So we eliminated a Division Director 2 position and 1.5 office assistant 2s, created these new senior legal assistants, and then put them up and said, hey, we were really clear in the transmittal letter and elsewhere that they were the product of the reallocation. So we tried to show that. That contract you're referring to, that's a longstanding contract, I think decades old with that school. We have one or more high school students at any given time working in this office. As a matter of fact, this morning I was in grand jury, and that person was in grand jury with our staff learning the work. It's very endearing to have those students in our office. I think to some extent it's hard, the things that they're exposed to, but it's real life stuff. So I think that's a valuable program. It's a low dollar amount, but we think we get good benefit to the kids who are learning education.
Where is that school located?
I don't know where the school is. It may be in North Portland.
It says St. Joseph's, at least that's what it said in the.
Is it De La Salle?
I believe they are.
I think it's my high school, De La Salle Catholic High School.
Okay,
It's at St. Joseph. Yeah, it's De La Salle.
got it, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's all it said in there. So I was like, what's this school?
So
Just to follow up on that question, Commissioner Singleton, thank you. I mean, we have been looking for those internal reallocations. Like, for example, we eliminated a position on the 6th floor that is who greets people that come. So oftentimes when I've met with commissioners, you're waiting for a while because I don't have a person stationed there because we constricted that down. So we've been trying to really scrimp and scrape as much as we can to find those savings for positions. And I would say we are maybe sometimes a little beyond bare bones, particularly with the OA2 type positions that we're trying to kind of contract down.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always going to ask, so I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to,
So I just had a question, because I don't think any of the cuts that happened are a reflection on, hey, we want to cut somebody's budget. So I think the whole, like, this is intentionally going after one thing, it's like all across the county, as you know, there's lots of cuts being made. And how many cuts are in your, which is a core function of the county?
Yeah, we took it was a 5% constriction with the chair's budget, and then an additional approximately 5% from other loss out of grant funding, TriMet, City of Portland, and other sources. So we're pretty close to a 10% cut this year that we're currently facing.
And the comments about the litmus test would apply to anything, any cut to your office?
Yeah, it does to me. Litmus test meaning the conversations that we have about the future of Multnomah County and the things that we need on an enterprise scale, we have invested in. A lot of the additions that you've mentioned that we've talked about, D3, are those strategic, thoughtful investments to make some of the outcomes, the county-wide or enterprise-wide outcomes that we all know is important. And we talk about them regularly. My comment on the litmus test is whether we'll continue in that vision or start to relapse.
So I'm just curious if that's this perspective of a $386,000 reduction. I'm just looking at amendment number 1, which has a $500,000 reduction. So it'd be 386.
It's my perspective.
He said the same thing when we talked about my amendment.
I'm just, is there any level of cut in the office that would be manageable?
Yep, so like all the other departments, as you mentioned, we started with the 5% as well. We went through the process just like everybody else did as well. Why comments cover multiple cuts that have been produced. I think that's what D2 was mentioning earlier. Are there offices that have multiple? If you add them all up, it's a lot for sure, especially with the enterprise work that my office is responsible in doing. It affects all departments. It affects the entire county as well as the service delivery as well. And I think we all have acknowledged that at some point or another.
Are there any senior positions that were reduced in your budget?
Not this year.
Or last year? But I can answer like the year before, no, either, because every year I've raised this issue, but.
But I can go back and let you know what happened. Actually, I believe you received the information on how the growth has been year over year.
They were ads the last couple of years.
There have been reductions as well, but you have the same information that I have.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this one? All right, let's move on to the DDA treatment court. This is 7B. It says Moyer, but I believe this is Commissioner Brum Edwards as well. So this is
Uses the general fund
Yes.
offset from tobacco.
7B, DDA treatment court.
Yeah, we pull out the general fund. Use the tobacco money
Yes.
to fund that program.
Yeah,
Do you want me to talk about it? Want to talk about it?
go ahead.
Yeah, I think that this is another one of those areas that could end up costing us if we eliminate this position, because this is an alternative to incarceration. I happen to be pretty passionate about treatment courts. I think that they have been that push that some people have needed in order to address the substance use disorder that has resulted in them getting in trouble with the law. And I really view this as a vital tool in our criminal justice system that balances the needs to address the underlying issue an individual has, but has the ability to have accountability attached to it when their behavior has harmed the community. So this is, I'll let the DA talk about it in more detail, but from my perspective, this is a component of the criminal justice system that I think is really important to keep in place, because I think it results in better long-term outcomes for everybody involved, is my perspective.
And just to do the crosswalk, because there's nobody going to pop up, I don't think, to do the offset, is just going back to, goes when we had the discussion about the fees, the fee schedule, and that while for many of our fees, we were doing full cost recovery, we weren't for tobacco retail license fees, especially on the violations. So we moved to increase the fees so that we get to full cost recovery, and then we backed out the general fund that had been covering, because we weren't at full cost recovery, and have shifted that ongoing general fund to pay for this.
Okay, so raising fees in the health department to offset general funds, moving that general fund out of the health department into the district attorney's office to pay for the,
right, because we will be paying for, the fees will be paying for the health department work.
Yep. 100% cost recovery. Okay, any other?
We need about 10 more of those.
Yeah, any other questions on this one? Okay, thank you. We've got 23, East County District Attorney, 23.
That's me.
That is page 52. I'm going to play Anna. Anna, no, you don't need to come up here. I was saying I'm reading the pages like you. You're good. You just did it.
Okay, so this is restoring 1 East Portland Neighborhood District Attorney. I've spent a lot of time on the dais talking about my concern about East Portland and the continued impact on the community there of just very high levels of, disproportionate levels of crime, livability-related issues, and in the chair's budget, all of the neighborhood-based prosecution, and community engagement all those positions were eliminated. So this is a restoration of East Portland, something that I've heard from my East Portland neighbors, that it's a very valuable thing to have somebody actually in the area or in the region. So this is a restoration, and the pay for is one of the revenue amendments. Nope, is that right? No, sorry.
Vacancy savings.
It's one time only. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Vacancy savings, excluding, this is my one vacancy savings that I talked about the other day, that it excludes the health department, because of course I haven't received any information from the health department yet about the totality. And it's just a Q1 vacancy savings.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this item, on this amendment? On this item, I feel like I'm at an auction house. On this item before us today.
No, I mean, I think just to name that a lot of us are using similar offsetting cuts, so at some point, we're going to have to wrangle what those look like.
Yeah.
I would, if I could just add Mariel Mota, Chief Deputy for the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. I just want to make sure that there's not conflation of what this position's role is. So I think there's been a little bit of crosstalk that this position might be associated to the organized retail theft position or associated to the auto theft task force position. This is actually a distinct geographically located position that has handled cases including massive copper theft that took out the power grid for close to 200,000 homes over the course of 2 years, and caused a lethal car accident in East County. And interestingly, the state of Oregon doesn't have specific statutes to address that kind of harm when you steal public utilities. So we've had to basically create a specialist in this position as to how to deal with this particular type of theft when it's a roughly, organized is probably strong, but more organized than just an individual actor. And we have fences involved with selling the illicit copper, also plaques that were stolen, brass plaques that were stolen from TriMet stations, things of that nature. This position has handled several community homes that were the owners were later charged with animal abuse for animal hoarding. These are neighborhood issues that occur in these small sort of insular communities where one person is having a completely disproportionate impact on the cleanliness, the safety, the overall livability of a small area. So this is a specialized position that's geographically based in East, works closely with the neighborhood response teams and the neighborhood associations in that area, and is not, in fact, connected to the auto theft task force or the organized retail theft task forces.
And just to quickly add, Nathan Vasquez, District Attorney. This position also works heavily on gun violence for this area that is particularly impacted when we look at the maps for the area within that East District. Gun violence continues to be a very difficult for the neighborhoods. Works closely with our Rockwood Gresham neighborhood deputy, which is funded separately by the City of Portland and the City of Gresham. Those two deputies work together for that kind of whole East County area. But in areas that are really hard hit by gun violence in that particular region.
Okay. Great, thank you. We're going to move on to Amendment 30, which is also for the District Attorney's Office. This funds, I believe, 7 positions in the Strategic Prosecution Unit. We're on Amendment 30, which is on page 66. And the pay for from this is the one-time only additional placement out of shelter fund, as well as dollars from the revenue amendment number 1. Commissioner Jones-Dickson.
Yes, we're going to update this amendment. We're going to remove the pay for from HRS at 30302B and amend it to use the revenue amendment 1. So we'll resubmit that later on this afternoon or Tuesday. And DA, since you're here, would you like to share the difference between this unit and the East County DA?
So this particular amendment covers a lot of what has currently been cut from our budget, and these are active positions that we have in place right now that we would potentially lose. It covers a really, some of the most impactful work we do, whether it's the burglary task force, which serves on a county-wide basis. It also works on human trafficking. That deputy is covered within current funding here. In addition, it is the auto theft task force, which we've also been using to adjust to speed racing. It is one that we do a lot of spot response around the county to gun violence issues. And then, of course, with organized retail theft, we had some cuts that would impact that. And so we are looking to, this one has an investigative component to it. That particular investigative position, for example, pulled 1,000 cases, from the online portal that we were able to prosecute last year alone. So, and that was just one small piece of what this investigator did. So this is one where really what we're trying to do is be the most efficient way possible to respond to crime trends as they pop up. A key example of this is that the burglary task force started out very heavy in businesses, and we continue to watch and monitor that closely. But as we're extremely successful in that area in breaking up the burglary rings, we saw a huge pop-up in parts of downtown Portland and then North Portland with burglaries of apartment buildings. And so the deputy quickly transitioned to that and was able to be very successful in that. And so overall, this is designed to work closely with the community in a manner where we are responding to crime trends and doing that in the most impactful way possible. The other big piece is that I know that we've had a massive increase in human trafficking. There's been a lot of discussion about the illicit massage businesses. That is one area, but there's other areas of human trafficking as well that have really grown along 82nd Avenue all the way up into North Portland, but really it's throughout the community. I know it happens out on Barber Boulevard in Southwest. And we're looking this summer to make a huge push into the fall and winter of next year in coordination with other state resources that are quite literally dependent upon whether or not we're going to have the ability to do that, and that being, of course, with the Attorney General's office. So we're trying to pull in resources from around the state to tackle some of these massive problems, but without our core base to do that, we will be unable to respond to that.
And in addition to that, I know we've been talking a lot about just the work from the restorative justice and reparative justice work. Is there an opportunity or is there a focus on that through this work as well? I know Ms. Moda.
I'm happy to take that question, thank you. So I think one of the things that I would like to dispel, especially in this room of people, is that the DA's office is full of just fungible attorneys that can slot into any position. We have people that are highly specialized and highly trained to do different things. Mental health is an area, for example, that is so complex that it would be irresponsible of us to take any attorney and just slap them into any chair, because these are complicated areas of law. What our strategic prosecution unit specializes in is community-led prosecution initiatives. So that makes them more flexible, more responsive, and more data-focused than typical run-of-the-mill DDAs in our office that sit at their desks, read police reports, take those police reports to trial, and do that. This is more about strategic problem solving. So to answer your question about restorative justice, we see this as the place where restorative justice lives in the office, because these are forward-facing, public-facing prosecutors who have the time and the sensitivity and the specialized training that it takes to understand a new kind of conceptual change to how we've done criminal justice historically in this county, and be able to lead a program like restorative justice. That's where it lived in our office when I was doing it. I've done it the entire time it's been in the office, and that's where it will continue to live. So the thing that I think gets overlooked about our involvement in restorative justice is how labor-intensive the process of screening cases and connecting with victims around that is. As you can imagine, someone who's just experienced a violent assault or had a gun put in their face doesn't really want to talk about outcomes the day after that's happened. They need time, they need a compassionate witness to hear their trauma, they need resources and connective support to be able to understand the process and to know what that looks like in the future. And they also need long-term, sustained relationships with people that they have built trust with to have difficult conversations like that. So when we talk about diversion, or taking these very serious cases and moving it out of the traditional criminal justice system and exploring new models of accountability and new models of public safety, we rely on people who are specialized to do that. We can't just disseminate that kind of thing throughout the office and expect it to work. The strategic prosecution deputies are the ones that will be trained and that have been trained in our office to do restorative justice and other prison diversion initiatives in a way that's meaningful and responsive and trauma-informed with our community.
So specifically, what does that look like?
So that's a great question.
I've got a restorative justice question, so please don't get off of this before I get to speak. Yeah.
So what it looks like day to day.
Yeah.
That deputy, whoever was in charge of restorative justice, would compile a list of eligible case types that came in that morning as custodies. They would review each individual case. This is separate and apart from the case review that's happening by another issuing deputy. And if that case was facially eligible and didn't meet any of the disqualifying criteria for restorative justice, they would then reach out to the case deputy. The case deputy would continue to issue, but it would be on this sort of adjacent track where then the restorative justice deputy would reach out to the victims and other involved community stakeholders, because it's not always just the named victim. It's often other people that are impacted by this, like witnesses. Reach out to everyone involved in the case, work with the defense attorney to let them know this case is being considered for restorative justice, help the defense attorney start the process of a suitability assessment for that defendant. That process also takes time, because defendants also need time to build trust with somebody who's asking them to take accountability for a crime they've been accused of committing. And then basically the relationship between that deputy, that case, the issuing case deputy, the victims, the stakeholders, and the defense attorney is all managed by one deputy who's leading the restorative justice effort. And then, like, logistically, what that means is if everything works out, the victim wants to participate, they go over the informed consent. It's a very it's not lengthy, but it's a very involved sort of legal attestation of you understand what you're saying, you understand what you're doing, you understand what you're entering into. They work with the Restorative Roots Project or with Lutheran to make sure that the restorative protocols are being met and are followed through on, and that everyone agrees that we're kind of moving on the same path. And they also, they do the informed consent with the victim, they do the referral to the Restorative Roots Project, and they also track the case. So while we don't have full transparency, nor do we want full transparency once a case is no longer in our system, there is a follow-up period where we see how a person's doing. We ask, if they successfully complete, we're the ones who write the completion letter and the non-prosecution letter, and all of that goes back to one person. They also track that person's recidivism in the future. So it's more labor-intensive than just us going, here's the case. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work on our end. And that's where this work has to happen within our office.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I just spoke with the restorative justice folks on Saturday, and so what you're saying sounds really different than what the experience of referrals have been. It sounds like there's one particular attorney who has recently returned, Eric Zimmerman, who has actually done most of the referrals into restorative justice, and that's great, but I don't want it to be about a person. How do we institutionalize it?
Yes, great question.
Yes.
Yes, not your former Eric Zimmerman, different DA's office Eric Zimmerman. So that's a really good question, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's also a conflation between the juvenile restorative justice program and the adult side. So the juvenile system, as you're fully aware, has a lot of different diversion capacity, and RJ is one of those things within the juvenile. So Eric Zimmerman runs all of the referrals for juvenile. The adult part, which is largely more complicated and the cases have more kind of time exposure, different crimes are eligible. That's a different thing entirely. So in terms of how we institutionalize it, our goal is to have the strategic prosecution deputies trained to handle this. So it's like, sometimes we call it like the lost at sea problem, right? You have one person who knows how to do a thing, and if they get lost at sea, nobody else in the office knows how to do it. We're trying to prevent that by having all 3 deputies trained in how to do restorative justice. There will be a lead. I will be overseeing the program myself, so I can always step in for backup. But to answer your question very clearly, I want to keep the juvenile part that goes to Lutheran away from the adult part that will start going back to Restorative Roots Project.
I appreciate that, and I will say I've heard similar referral issues, so I think there's a bigger conversation to have, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a budget conversation, but I'd love to figure out, because there's also a Portland police component to this that has nothing to do with you all about referrals, and so there's just something that seems to be missing in the ecosystem, but we can follow up more about that offline.
I would love to.
Maybe that's what the budget note's for. I was thinking about moving forward to.
You know, the other thing I'd like to add, we would really enjoy the opportunity to have a budget note attached that required us to report out on a quarterly basis about what our outcomes look like, what kinds of cases we're referring, the crime trends that the strategic prosecution unit is seeing, how we're responding to those crime trends, and to hear back from the commissioners, because we get feedback from different sources on what your public safety priorities are looking like. And that's something that I think has been sorely lacking in the relationship between our office and the board that we'd like to install into this process through a budget note.
Yeah.
And I just want to add that I just kind of wanted to add to what Mariel was saying. We are eager to report back to the board on the crime trends we're seeing and what the office is doing in response, and hear what the board's priorities there are. Mariel and I yesterday were at the mayor's listening session with affordable housing providers and property managers. And that was something where we saw an opportunity. We were hearing from them. They're running into all sorts of issues. I mean, it's no secret that our affordable housing providers are getting crushed with all sorts of different stresses and pressures and the complexity of people's needs. And it was really clear that they rely primarily on civil processes to address what is sometimes criminal issues. And they need some compassionate, thoughtful support from committed partners to help disrupt things. There was one provider that was describing people piggybacking on coming into their units, drug dealing in the building, RV that was parked outside effectively serving as a food truck with drugs outside their unit, and they were seeking assistance. And the mayor kept looking in the back and saying, Mariel, can you chime in to help to talk through this issue with these folks? And it just occurred to us in that moment that there's an opportunity to sit down. Obviously, we want to tailor those responses to what meets the needs of those communities, because we don't want these to be punitive interventions that are impacting people's housing stability in a way that isn't aligned with county values, but there probably are also things that we can do to help support residents.
Yeah.
And just to
Adam, I'm
piggyback.
a little disappointed that you're calling the landlords providers. I thought you would stay on the same side with me on that one as a former housing wonk. I will just say, because you brought this up, I have a lot of racial equity concerns with the way that conversation is happening around which specific properties are being brought forward and targeted. So would love to talk to you more if that's something you all decide to move into, to make sure that we're not participating in something that on the front end of it is going to have a disproportionate impact on Black folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and Mariel and I talked about that, right? It has to be something that's done right and is done in alignment with our values, and we don't want to step into a space where there are ignorances, where we're running into problems, right? But that's something that we would love to partner with you on, right? We know you have so much wisdom and experience in this area. We think there's a needle to thread there and trying to do the right thing to support those communities.
This is what I like to say about this, because I'm very passionate about that, and I think our impacts need to be measured carefully, and that our outcomes need to be driven by equity, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. What the law has given prosecutors is a hammer. We are really, really good in our lane. We are very, very effective in our lane. What strategic prosecution adds to our office is a scalpel. So we're able to come into situations like that, assess it for things like equity, not just use the law as a shield to manufacture an outcome that makes it sound good, but to actually have a meaningful, sustainable, and wanted impact in our community. That's why we're so obsessive about strategic prosecution, because we can do this in a sloppy way. We want to do it in a thoughtful way, and we want to do it in a way that really supports the values of this community, and is more efficient, more cost-effective, and has better outcomes. And that's why we lean so heavily into these strategic prosecution resources.
So I just want to say, since y'all are here, and the next one I don't think is yours, that, and I think I said this to you, DA, when we had an opportunity to talk, we're all using the same offsetting cuts for different things. And so just want to be clear, it isn't about this work isn't good work or that work isn't good work. It's going to come down to how we figure out how to prioritize the little bit of revenue that we did have added, as well as any of the offsetting cuts that we're all using.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I talk about my budget now?
Yeah, I was afraid people were stealing your thunder by talking about something.
No, it's all right. It's not a thunder.
Okay.
And I would like to call it draft, but I felt like it's Thursday and I should put it out there. I am not an expert at restorative justice, but I do take the input of community leaders seriously on this. And I think restorative justice in some circumstances can really fill a void in our criminal justice system that I don't think incarceration does. And so what my budget note does is it does create a work group to discuss how to best implement, and this is adult restorative justice, I think I probably should have clarified that, and holds $250,000 in contingency as a potential carrot if we can get a proposal. The work group would be convened by the Department of Community Justice, include representatives from the district attorney, city police, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, victims, advocates, and community partners. I'm sure I'm missing people. And we would request a recommendation on how best we could utilize and expand our restorative justice programs. So the intention, again, I think there are questions about who's right for this, how we would resource it. But I think there's a there. And I would love to see if getting partners together to really talk through some of the barriers we're having right now and a recommendation that comes forward to the board with how they would greater utilize restorative justice, potentially up to $250,000, hopefully spurs a conversation about an approach that I think is underutilized in our community. So please give me feedback on language. This is not my area of expertise, but I got enough feedback from the community that this was an area that was a high priority, and that many people feel we could do better. So very interested in seeing what could come forward and make this a more effective tool in our toolbox.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for dropping that budget note.
You're in the lead. You're in the lead.
I now have the most budget notes? I'm sure someone will tell me.
Okay, moving on to Amendment 32, Reentry Transition Hub. And that is Commissioner Jones-Dixon. That is on page 70. Oh, Commissioner Jones-Dixon and Commissioner Brim Edwards. So it directs $160,000 for the build-out and operational establishment of the county's reentry transition hub. Thank you. And the pay for is the housing placement and retention placement out of shelter bucket. So this is, well, I will just let you talk about it. Oh, the impacted departments is MCSO? Okay.
Yes, I will reintroduce it. So this is work that MCSO is doing, I believe Chief Reardon and also Steve Cicatelli. And the purpose of the hub is to engage with each and every single person that is released from our care, from the jail system, and working with community partners as far as connecting those individuals to services that are offered through the county, by the county, and other providers throughout the region. So that's very high level.
Okay, great. So this wasn't a request in the sheriff's budget, like it wasn't a request?
No.
In terms of, okay.
No.
So I'd like to hear like, Katie. Just, you know,
You guys are allowed to sit there and see.
yeah, you can. Poor Anna, she's been moving her chair so much today. So just, you know, this wasn't something that the sheriff brought forward in terms of a request for funding in her budget requests. So just wanted to hear a little bit about where this is in the priority of the work of the sheriff's office and your capability to do this work.
Sure. Katie Burgard, Chief of Staff for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, she, her pronouns. We might be a little bit ahead of the curve on this specific topic. It is one of those topics where we have a federal earmark that includes dollars for pretrial services and transition type work that we had talked about piloting in our Closed Street program. And with a shift, bless you, with the shift in that pretrial work, a ramp down of that work, there is an anticipated use of these dollars, these transition dollars for behavioral health connection and resource service connection for the broader group of pretrial releases from folks in custody, which is all of our releases take place at the detention center. So the alignment with a ramp down in that pretrial unit and the continued intended use of that type of transition focused service and wraparound for folks was the concept of this transition reentry center, which is that vacant space at the Justice Center that has been, I think, mulled around for a while here since the restaurant space closed. So this amendment, as I understood it, was for the DCA side around the assessment and build out of that space.
Yes.
not the programmatic piece of that work.
It's a capital cost.
It's a capital cost, and so do you have those operational dollars targeted for the work of the programmatic pieces?
That might be a question I have to get back to you on.
Okay.
Me personally, as it comes back to the
I'm not
budget
asking if
folks.
you personally have the dollars.
No, I'm just saying, like, I personally don't have the detailed information to share at this moment. Yeah.
And I know the idea, there's been a lot of conversation around how can it be with partnerships, and I've talked a ton about outreach workers and how we never knew when our folks were getting released and having a place that we could meet people and how different that would be. So I'm sure that there's some of that expectation of partnership, and I love the idea. I hate the offset for a capital cost, so I'd love to figure out with you all if there's a different capital offset that we can use as opposed to client assistance dollars.
Chief, were you going to add something? No.
So I'll just say, there was a broader group that went down to Pima County that saw something that's very similar, where right near the, when people were exiting jail or leaving the courthouse, literally from the jail, there was just a blue path right to, it was voluntary, but just right by a like transition center or reentry center where people could get services and sort of get on their way and get their phone charged and get access to, a lot of different services. And it was just right there, which made it very easy for people to just say yes.
I will just clarify that the conversations we've been having around the federal earmark dollars and how that is moving forward through a BJA process is aligned with this budget note. It's kind of this phased approach. So we don't have an operations plan of program, like a program offer for that at this point, but it all aligns and had been circulated to you all in reference to that 800,000 earmark funds.
Yeah, and we had actually, we had put a program offer in case we were able to program those dollars, and unfortunately, we're not at that stage yet, as I know you sent out a recent update around that. So we don't know if that, when that's coming, like in the next fiscal year. So I think my questions are about like the timing of this and the need in the next fiscal year, and then also like the programming pieces like you were talking about, which I recognize you said like this is a little ahead of where the planning is for that. Okay. Anna, do you want to give your?
Yes, just quickly, so pulling from the additional housing placement out of shelter as the offset, this would represent 12 fewer placements from shelter into housing.
Thank you, Anna. Okay. So we're moving to pretrial. We have an amendment from Commissioner Brim Edwards. I also know that my office has been talking to your offices about fleshing out and trying to find alignment in some of the different pretrial proposals that have been out on the table. So everyone should have that. I have a handout of that as well that I'm happy to share with folks, and some proposed amendment because I recognize that the proposals that are on the table had different funding sources. So,
go ahead and talk about.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about, and so this is Amendment 9 that we're moving to now for pretrial services.
So the Amendment 9B takes the just $1 million that was in one-time only general fund that had been allocated in the chair's budget and puts it against a framework. It's not complete, the framework isn't paid for. This is a framework that came out of the sheriff indicating that in her budget and then accepted by the chair not to continue Close Street, and DCJ also discontinuing their pretrial work is like what goes in place of that. That previous system was more than a $4 million system, working with the courts and the other entities that interact in the system. there's a framework that is attached to this countywide amendment that would fund, would move the courts to more active use of the OPAT system and essentially have the courts like sort of end-to-end with the system, which would allow for easier step down of, if based on data, that individuals, if they're showing up for their court dates, that being able to step them down from the system. And they also, so they would, in addition to county funding for some of that, the assessment, because DCJ wouldn't be doing it anymore, and that sort of early initial stage, they would be putting in 4 court FTEs, adding it in, and the framework adds 7 court release assistant officers, and then also 8 pretrial support specialists, which would do the higher risk. So there wouldn't be, in this model, there wouldn't be the sheriff with close street. It comes out to about 2.6 with just those pieces, which is considerably less than the current cost. Part of that is because through efficiencies, but also because the court is putting in some resources. So again, the $1 million does not pay for it, but it puts it towards the framework and also has a nod to the amendment that Commissioner Jones-Dickson just referenced.
Okay. Great. I'm happy to talk through a little bit this, knowing that, but if you had questions, go for it.
No, I'll wait.
Okay, so I'm going to pass this out. So this is something that, like I said, has been shared, I think, with, and I apologize, Commissioner Moyer, I think my staff shared it with the staff of all offices who had submitted a pretrial amendment. So, which was everyone but you. So, and this is based on, so when by the deadlines that I had for my chair's proposed budget are earlier than you would think. And the work was still going on with the pretrial subcommittee in terms and in conversations on what would be needed. So the $1 million one-time only offer was really a starting point to make sure that we were driving forward the conversations, knowing that we had to have a solution by the time we adopted our budget in June. So what this proposal, and this proposal is based on conversations with many partners, including LIPSIC, the courts, the district attorney's office, DCJ, the sheriff's office. There's probably other folks that I'm forgetting to mention. And really looks at funding a few different pieces of work, which includes making sure that we have the resources on the court side in order to transition the pretrial work to their RAOs. So some of the investment is going to provide them their ability to staff up to be able to transition this work. It also recognizes that there is going to be some ongoing need for closed street supervision to, as the transition happens to the courts, they're going to need some time to ramp up. And it also recognizes that the electronic monitoring is also going to need to transition over to the courts. It also includes resources for ongoing case management support for folks who are on pretrial to help and so to do that. So and it really places that work with the Corrections Health Transition Services team because they're the ones that are have the closest nexus to the work that's happening. So it's to hire and contract peers for supportive services. It is to provide materials and supports, basically client assistance dollars is what's meant by that. It also gives dollars to the district attorney's office for a victim assistance program. That was something that came out of the pretrial subcommittee work as a identified need for the population and to continue to serve it. And so this So there are two budget amendments that are needed to do this, because so what it's doing two things. It is taking the one-time only dollars and turning them into ongoing dollars by swapping out some of the general fund, the ongoing general fund dollars that we had changed into one-time only to fund the capital project for the the permanent crisis stabilization and sobering center. So it does some budget magic, and thank you to Christian and team for helping to do that. And then it does use the revenue amendment to fund some of because this project and this work would take more than $1 million. I think the other thing, it does provide one-time only dollars to the courts to help them get ramped up. But I've had conversations with the courts on the need for an aligned ask for the legislature to increase the amount of state funding for our RAOs so that we are more in line with what other counties are receiving resources from the state for that work. So I will also share the two budget amendments that are necessary for that. So this is a packet. So that's one, so you can hand, that's one for, okay, and then this is the other. It's a set. Yeah, it's a set.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate this. It feels like it's in line with what came out of the work that I was doing with all of the pretrial partners in the framework I shared with LIPSIC, over a month ago now, I think. So I appreciate the putting back in victim advocates as well as peer specialists.
Yeah.
Avi, I've already said we're all fighting over the same revenue amendment,
Yes.
so we'll see how some of that shakes out. I think one thing of note is I would really like us to have written agreement with the courts, if it's in the IGA, that they will prioritize this as the funding ask to the state so that we can go down there together and really advocate for that. I imagine they may have other asks, and I think if this gets deprioritized, it's going to put us in a really tricky situation after just ramping up a new program and then not knowing if we have the funds to sustain it really worries me. So that would be one piece. And then the other is I would love us to get really clear about some of the data components that came up so consistently as one of the challenges with current partners is what is the data that we're looking to capture to understand if this program is effective, so we build it in on the front end, as opposed to trying to get it out of systems that maybe don't actually capture that data.
Yes, so thank you, and that's right, and I maybe forgot to say this, but this really takes a lot of the work that was laid out in your plan, Commissioner Brim Edwards, and tries to bring them together and allocates enough funding to make sure that we can get something feasible done. It does not take all components of all the proposals that have been on the table, because that's really, I don't think it's something that we can do from a funding perspective with the budget situation that we're in, but it tries to take the heart of that. In terms of the courts, I think that is a very good ask, and we have, like I said, we've already had conversations with them about the need to have that the collective ask of the legislature, and having commitment to prioritize that is something that I think is good. I will say that I think the courts are very excited about the data possibilities with this, because one of the things that the state actually doesn't have any pretrial data from Multnomah County because of the way that we've been doing it traditionally. So this actually, by moving everything, I know, look at, there's heads shaking all over the room. So really, I mean, if you don't have Multnomah County in the state's data, you really don't have a good picture of what's actually happening in a program like that. So this will, by having the courts, own this like they do in other counties, it will allow that to happen. But we also want to be able to have them report out. So I think a corollary to this would be a budget note for updates to the board on how this transition work is doing and then how the conversations are going. So that's something that I think would be very helpful. Okay.
So I have a question. Who's going to do the initial assessment?
Which part are you
in this plan?
The courts.
So I'm just looking at the comparative numbers that we worked out, and this is, they won't be able to run this a program with this amount of money. So the court release assistance officers are approximately $132,000 a year, which they had 7. and you've put 200,000 for that, so they could actually hire 1.5 versus 7. And and then the electronic monitoring is 300K, so this is about $1 million short of the courts being handed the plan, being handed the responsibilities. I don't think they would agree to do this because the resources aren't here to take from DCJ the assessment and all that initial work.
So this is, and Stacy, I don't know if you're here to talk to that or if you just came down. Yeah.
Oh, no, just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we really should have the courts here because, I mean, we can't just tell them to do it.
So I think this is based on the conversation with the courts on what they're needed. They have been, this proposal has been shared with Barb in terms of what we were going to be doing. There is some adjustment that's going to be needed in terms of how we're prioritizing who is able to get supervision. Also, I think the importance of recognizing that higher level supervision is going to be an important priority to make sure that is part of the new program that we're setting up, so because the higher level supervision it really helps decrease the pressure on keeping folks in jail during the pretrial time and then the pressure on our jail system. So we are going to have conversations about how we are going to prioritize the supervision. It's more than just the $200,000, though. It's an additional $478,000.
You also are having them do the electronic monitoring of the contracts. I mean, I've spoken to the courts on a pretty regular basis. So did they say they would do this? Because my understanding is they said no. I mean, it's not adequate to.
One thing I would add in here is, it doesn't feel clear in the way it's currently laid out, but is the transition is for 6 months? Like, it's not a full fiscal year that you're trying to fund, is that correct?
But DCJ is not doing any of the work.
Can I have my question answered?
Yeah, so the transition for closed street supervision to continue gets us through, I'm going to look to you to answer that question, because I don't want to say the wrong month.
Hi, folks. Natalie Minus, she, her pronouns, policy advisor for the chair. So to answer your question, yes, FY27, we're looking at a transition year. So it would both be a ramp down of closed street and then the starting of REOs.
DCJ, they're not going to continue doing the assessments. The court just said that, the chair just said that you were anticipating the courts doing it immediately?
Correct. So I also want to acknowledge that when I spoke with the courts, they did flag that this would be a large transition for them, that there's a lot of unknowns. But this does provide additional dollars to the pot to start the work.
It doesn't come anywhere close to what they said they would need to do the assessments and run the systems and do the court notifications.
Correct, because it's only for a 6-month time period. This would have the REOs starting their work in January of 2027. FY28 will need a different financial strategy that funds the full year.
So what money in January is available for what? So at that point, the sheriff wouldn't be doing closed street anymore.
So I'll also say the money is required to have an IGA signed as well. And so that is another step that would need to be handled before January. But January 1, there could be $678,000.
How much?
$678,000.
Which they had to do what we consider high risk. So the IGA would just be for 6 months? Or how long would the IGA? What's that 678 supposed to cover?
It would go to 4 REOs and $200,000 worth of electronic monitoring.
Can I make a recommendation? Can we pick this up on Monday or Tuesday of next week? Because we have we have our LIPSIC executive committee meeting and then.
Yeah. Okay, we're continuing. I wanted to introduce this today, though, because introducing it on Tuesday morning felt too late. So I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to get this out there. There's a lot of questions, and I think a lot of more discussion that has to happen. And I think also, like, all of the work that needs to happen, or was kind of all the proposals that are out there, there also has to be like financial realities of what we're able to do in the next year. So Okay, with that.
Can we ask if we're going to discuss this, that we have the courts come in, because this is actually transitioning everything to another body that has no obligation to do anything? I mean, for us, so, I mean, we can't commit the courts to do something. So I would like them to come and say what they could do with this money, because my understanding it's woefully inadequate.
Yes. So I will say, and I know we're losing folks, so we're going to, we'll reconvene Tuesday morning. We are going to, we can start with pretrial conversation. We also were supposed to get to budget notes today that we did not. And then we also have the miscellaneous, which random adds and changes, which is a great descriptor. So
A few more minutes.
so that will be our work on Tuesday.
Before you adjourn.
Oh, okay, and then it sounds like we have, so folks, yeah, so it sounds like we have some budget notes and amendments.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So the first is a budget note. This is kind of riffs off the discussion we had around the enterprise contract management and the fact that deliverables and outcomes are all just spread across the county in a variety of different formats, but not actually in our enterprise contract management system, which makes it very challenging to do just any sort of performance management or just overview of contract performance. And of course, the county spends over $1 billion on contracts. So the budget note says, prior to the FY28 budget introduction, the county will ensure that its enterprise contract management system will have a functional ECM tool for storing contract deliverables or performance outcomes, and county contract managers will utilize this tool for contracts so that contracts can be actively monitored and performance managed. The contracts and performance evaluation should be available for internal and external review. Reporting should be tracked in consistent formats with a singular system that tracks deliverables and impacts of contract performance, that evaluates contracts and management performance. The outcomes and service delivery impacts from contracted services should be monitored with ongoing contract performance management and oversight and quarterly reporting to the Commission. Then I referenced this morning. This is 4B, and it is the just removing of the management responsibilities in the economic development position that is shifting. Then I have another proposed budget note. This is this budget note requests development of an affordability index by the chief financial officer, informed by the affordability analysis report that was sponsored by Commissioner Moyer and unanimously adopted by the Commission, April 30th, 2026. Development of an affordability index will also consider factors including the affordability of rent, mortgage, food, utilities, childcare, transportation, healthcare, and education. And then just for the record, I'm also, during the public meeting, just going to submit some of the amendments that I'm going to be co-sponsoring. Thank you.
Sorry, what was that last time? What was that?
I said I'm also going to be submitting, just for the public record in a public meeting, the amendments that I'm going to be co-sponsoring.
You'll be submitting new amendments?
No, that I'm going to be co-sponsoring. We were told we had to do that in a public forum.
I don't think I understand what you're saying. You're
That was one in particular where both you and I were interested in co-sponsoring, and since we couldn't do that behind closed doors, because it would have been the
Right,
delivery.
exactly.
Yeah.
You got it. For everybody out there, it's so that if you have more than two people, say, on an amendment, it's just done in a public setting so that there's not discussions among or serial discussion among a quorum.
Okay.
And by procedure, is that happening now, or are you just forecasting?
Yeah, I'm going to, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just because I was, but Commissioner Jones-Dixon, it's just a piece of paper I'm going to submit for efficiency.
Okay.
Great. I have a handful of amendments. Here's a packet. The first one is.
Are these packets?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
no, well, they're stapled together. The first one is the amendment to Amendment 30, removing the funds that we had set aside for HSD for the Strategic Prosecution Unit through for the DA's office. And then we're introducing a new amendment. It's to fund 3 of the DCJ positions within the Juvenile Services Division. As we heard from the presentation, there's 60% of the youth that are in our care or in custody are African American and Latino, and this will help address that in services. And then we have 4 budget notes. The first one is to explore or establish an IGA or MOU with the 3 smaller cities around homeless services in East Multnomah County. And then budget note number 4 is to put together to take a look at the investments that are being made in East County around just the services that we provide at large. And then we have another budget note around just the holding facility. The city of Gresham, the police department has a holding facility that's been inoperable over the last 10 years due to just funding in general. So we're going to do a feasibility report on what it would take to reopen that so the officers don't have to travel all the way into Portland whenever they make an arrest or hold folks in custody. And 2 more budget notes. One is around housing innovation and how we can use technology to help with the eviction process. And then the 5th budget note, which is a fairly big one, is around data infrastructure. So all these will be posted online, and you can read them at your leisure. I can share more next week.
Okay, and the budget note number 5 about the data, I'm curious how this works with your previous one on the budget data. Is it similar? Is it different?
I'll share next week.
Okay, all right.
We have some folks waiting upstairs.
Okay.
I would definitely love to talk further. The IGA concept that you just mentioned is something I had proposed a couple of months ago about a multi-city compact as opposed to just the IGA with the city of Portland. So I think we're doing similar work there that I also already have a budget note for.
Make
Okay.
it easy.
It'd be great to have fewer budget notes, I'm sure.
This is just my, I only have one copy.
Oh, so you can give it to the board clerk, okay.
Who do I give it to?
The board clerk, so they can get it, or maybe Christian maybe, I don't know. Okay.
Paper everywhere.
Great, okay, so that brings us to the end of today, except we have, Christian, do you want to provide us with an overview of where we are real quick, just on the revenue amendment? I think you did some quick back of the napkin math, so we can see where we are landing on that right this second.
Sure. For the record, Christian Elkin, County Budget Director. So yesterday, we started out talking about how many of the revenue offsets were being used in multiple amendments. We were at about, I think, 2.7 when we started the day. And yesterday, when we ended the day with the amendment shifts, we were at a negative 4.5 million. And we just added a few more to that list. So we will get that updated. Tomorrow will be update day and try to get all of this into packages so that you all, since we're starting to head towards adoption, I just want to make sure that you all have that information available so that we understand where we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christian. So more to come, and I do think that our work this weekend should be thinking about the priorities of this, knowing that we don't have enough dollars to do everything that we want, of like where everybody's priorities are, so we can start Tuesday with running through the rest of the amendments, talking about budget notes, but then also like really kind of starting to home in on where we are. Okay, thanks everybody for this.
I just want to note, even though I asked for it, I did not get the FTE for the health department, which is really disappointing.
Okay,
I just want to note that.
Okay, I think there was an update on that, but I'm
not in my inbox. I mean, happy to get it, but.
Yeah, and I think Chris said that he would get it to you in 24 hours, and so that is what we're going to be looking, that's what my expectation is. Okay.
Just not acceptable, though. I mean, we're in a public meeting. I'm just.
we had this conversation already this morning, and I said, like, this is where we are right now, that's the reality of where we are, and that's what we're going to do. So I have every expectation that those numbers are going to get out to everyone, and then we can review them in public on Tuesday. All right, we are adjourned.